what we're doing is like, it makes sense. They have created this platform where you can run AI that actually is negative carbon footprint, because the energy they generate is go back, they do pellets and reuse it in the houses in the area where the servers are. So it's actually super cool.
Yeah, so what, we had some people that are working more in the circular kind of economy ideas, and that basically means you try to not have a life cycle where you just build something, you use it, and you throw it away, but actually try to have a circle of reusing that material properly, and then having perhaps a business model that really makes the life cycle as prolonged as possible, and not the. I can tell you, I recently my dishwasher broke at home, and it was like a month after the warranty went out.
Of course.
Throw it away.
And
it's always like that.
It's made that way.
Right?
It's made that way.
It probably is, right? And they have no incentive whatsoever when you build like a dishwasher to make it last as long as possible, because you have a warranty, because you have to, otherwise you won't buy it. But then if you try to make it work that long but not longer, that's the best incentive they can have. And that's not really what circular economy is about. And in this case, I guess Green AI, they have some idea of you have to have some kind of compute centers, some kind of machines that have to do all the storage and compute, but then they can also reuse potentially, because it will generate a lot of energy, right? Do you know anything more about that? Can you speak about how it works a bit more?
I know that the detail. I hope that they can come here one day and talk a bit. But the issue with what Green AI is doing is that it can help companies to be able to compute AI algorithm that takes a lot of, like, optimizing material. So in the industry, in the manufacturing industry, you still use a lot of material, because to create new algorithms, it takes a lot of power, a lot of CPUs that almost impossible to get, or it's really expensive. So the idea with Green AI is they have a chip called Cerebra that is like
chip. What's it?
Cerebra.
What's that?
It's a new chip, and it's around 64 CPUs. Like,
is it an AMD chip, or who makes that?
The company is called Cerebra.
Oh, okay, Coursera's.
Cerebra.
Okay, Cerebra is another brand.
Yeah.
Okay, new for me.
Yeah, more for me too.
Very cool.
But anyway, so for us, the company I work in, Nagarro, we are really keen on sustainability. We start planting trees, actually. Mm-hmm. And for us was like this, and we saw a gap within the manufacturing industry in Sweden. We talk about we're industry in a nation, but we still don't apply AI in the industrial space. Mm-hmm. So we still manufacture. There's not a lot of AI algorithm running how you optimize the amount of material you use. In the States, you see it a lot, but not in Sweden, unfortunately.
And how does it work? Green AI is a Swedish company. It's a Swedish startup.
Yes.
So does it mean also that this becomes a European or Swedish cloud provider, so to speak, as a alternative to the American clouds?
Exactly. It's based in Sweden, so it's 100% European. So for any high regulated companies, that makes sense, because it's totally here.
So it's actually it's the green value proposition, which is really strong in itself, but then it's also sensitive data proposition of Swedish cloud provider.
And speed.
Or European. And what do you mean speed?
We actually doing a POC today for a client. They have an algorithm running that takes 25 hours to run. And the target is to go under an hour.
So basically they have, what do you mean with speed in terms of setting everything up? And
when you process the data.
Okay, so it's actually really fast.
Really fast.
Compute.
Yeah,
so
compute.
It's optimized hardware to do the type of computation you need to do in a faster way than other competitors.
Yeah, so here we have Cerebra's, the CS2 is a revolution in AI infrastructure. So here we have a microchip, right?
Yep.
That is very much what they have focused on putting in their data center.
Yes.
So this is very much an AI-oriented chip.
Exactly.
And therefore now we are talking hardcore AI ready, AI relevant.
Yes.
Green, Swedish.
Yeah, that's amazing.
That's a pretty cool level
I know.
proposition.
That's what I fell in love with them. So when they reach out to me, I say like, let's do it. So now Nagarro, we believe in this. It's when you talk about. Actually, we discussed this today, and I said like, all the old vendors, cloud. I say old because they're not 10 years old. Like, that's legacy. And they were built for the data that was existing at the time. And when Green AI started, they're doing this for the future readiness. And today we talk about text, all the large
language models.
Exactly. But when image became, when we start talking about creating really cool videos, maybe you can ask robot to give you a video of me running in a beautiful mountain in there. So at that point, we don't have enough computing. No. So these guys have future ready.
Yeah, but this actually ties back to something you have said many times on the pod, Anders, is when we talk about the big tech giants, they are more afraid of
small startups.
The small startups, because the small startup has the opportunity to say, if I would do something today, I don't have any tech depth. I don't need to worry about that. I just need to do what is most future-proof 2023. How would you do it? And then you can go out and do it. And everybody else now, even if you're only a 10-year-old company, 10 years in
that's
this
a long time.
is a long time.
That's huge.
You know, and now we have all this compute. Well, yeah, but that's old style CPUs.
Yeah.
That's not what I want. I want Cerberus style. It's interesting, right?
It is, and I think that's an awesome topic to speak more about.
I hope you invite Jacob here one day.
But also to just speak about, if you grow as a company and scale up to become an enterprise, and Google, said this once, they are not that afraid about other enterprises, so they're more afraid about startups. And why is that really? Why can't you scale with style, as I usually call it?
Well, scale with style, that's another T-shirt, by the way.
And, you should be able as a enterprise company to have the most innovative type of environment as possible, because you have the resources and the use cases and the data and the talent and whatnot. But still, startups sometimes trumps that. I think that's an awesome topic, right, to speak more about.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I remember before I joined the consulting companies, I work in large corporations. And I said once that you can be in both places at the same time. You can act as a startup, be in an enterprise. It's possible.
It is possible, but really hard for most.
And the issue is where you have that line, because when you do this, the people in the company think, only this cool R&D department is doing the cool stuff. So it will be like boring versus fun. So there's a little bit, and in my experience, the balance is to ensure that you have that focus in the basics, ensure that the basics is ready. At the same time, don't start a little bit with the startup thinking, because I understand in a big enterprise, not every time somebody see a new tool, you can bring it in. It would be a nightmare for IT.
Right.
So we start about, just how to, the enterprise architect will kill you. Literally, if you come with that, I have a new tool. So the balance of being, that big machinery that you have to have control the cost. Every tool cost, if it's only for a small department, and people that want to learn, you have your own. And that's a little bit the idea when I joined a consulting company. I thought that's how consulting companies help, where you can be help to accelerate, and then your own employees can catch up, because otherwise you don't have the energy and effort to be in the both places at the same time. But it's not that clear.
It's not, and it's hard. When you scale, it's for one the personnel issue, because it's when you grow above a certain number of people, it's harder to just innovate and quickly take action. But also from an infrastructure point of view, as you say, because then you need to have the procedures for how do you do deployment properly, and you need to vet everything towards your existing infrastructure, and how do you still keep to have an innovative environment in that scale. I think that's an awesome topic to speak more about, to keep enterprises still being creative and innovative, right?
Yeah, and again, I think it's the enabling of be able to, for example, I remember when I was working in a company, we couldn't get rid of Excel if life was dependent on that. Finance was, they love Excel. At the same time, we were doing a really cool AI algorithm with the neural network to predict how to call somebody, because that data didn't have to be perfect. Right. So we kind of bypass governance, and we did. Yeah. And when we prove the value, then we say, okay, now we have play. Now we need to go into the enterprise level, choose the right tool, ensure that everything is there. So being able to play with a budget, and I think it's a matter of also of money. When you talk about innovation, you have to innovation that costs money, and I think a lot of big enterprise don't play as long as it doesn't cost. So it's also a little bit, you need to have a strategy where you have that money pinpointed to innovation, and maybe innovation doesn't bring value, and that's a little bit also of the issue with big enterprise, that you are there to. It's not like you need to show that it's a value coming in or out.
But this is potentially one of the topics today, if we're going to connect it to both startups but also enterprises failing or succeeding, to dissect the definition and what we mean with innovation. And this is actually cliffhanger, hint, trailer. It's going to be one of my key. There's going to be an input to my keynote in Data Innovation Summit this year.
Oh,
I've read some.
It's the first breaking news here, right?
It's breaking news that we're gonna enter into one Data Innovation Summit. So that's dissect
11th
innovation.
of May, right?
11th and 12th of May.
Yeah.
So, so there's of course tons of books written on this, and there is people who wrote about these and defined this in the 40s and the 50s. Schumpeter is one. George Moore talked about the crossing the chasm and all that, and there's some interesting definitions that we sort of. It's interesting to discuss what is innovation when is something innovation versus an invention. So to play with something as a prototype that never scales, we have this discussion with Christer Ågren. Is this an innovation, or is it actually when it gets to use that is innovation? So this whole thing, I think, is misunderstood, because there's one thing to have an invention, and a POC is a completely different thing to put something in production, and then it's even a bigger thing to put something in large-scale adoption.
Yeah, and I think it's really fun, because yesterday I was in London in another event, and we talk about exactly the same. A lot of companies talk about innovation, but it's not innovation. It's copycat. You just need to look what somebody else is doing, and maybe for your company it's innovation, but today it's not a lot of things that somebody else has done yet. Maybe not in your industry, but and I remember we had a client and he said, "Oh, we want to do a proof of concept about it was about text analytics," and I told him that concept is already proven. So you're telling me you need to know if this makes sense in your company. And we call it proof of value in Nagarro. It's semantics, but it's actually true. So maybe innovation is, like you say, what is innovation and when it's happening? Because in some companies, digitalization is, we send emails now. Yes. Mm-hmm. That's also digitalization.
But this is the point. So I've been together with Mikkel Klingvall exploring all the research, finding what are these common definitions of this, to actually go from a quite blurry, hyped word we use to really dissect what it means, because there is a lot of understanding that means invention, you need to do this. But if you understand the truer meaning of innovation as something that scales or is used, that's not the same. This is the tech invention, and this go from tech invention to innovation, that implies value in use. So innovation is not an innovation until it's used and it's valuable in use. Mm-hmm. Then you need to explore something else. And then Schumpeter, he highlights this invention, innovation, and then he calls it diffusion, which is ultimately scaling into widespread usage, adoption.
Yep.
So if you look at this curve now, what you do that is invention part, what you do that is finding the economical setup of an innovation that provides value, not only the value for the guys using it, but the value for the people producing it. There's an economical requirement here for something to be sustainable innovation. And then how to scale, how to cross the chasm, right? Diffusion. Very different sets of competencies or capabilities. And now we use the word innovation really broadly.
A lot, in a lot of places.
But still, just to argue with as well.
I love that.
if we take ChatGPT, for example, I think it's an interesting example. You know, it was a big breakthrough when you found the big mainstream usage of it. It really like completely disrupted a lot of mainstream people and media and whatnot. But in reality, the innovation at least happened long before that.
Actually, let's now use Joseph Schumpeter's definitions of this that was coined in the 1940s, to explore ChatGPT. So he makes the distinction now: what is invention, what is innovation, and what is diffusion. Okay, so the technological invention that ChatGPT rests upon happens way before. Innovation, according to Schumpeter, I'm trying to paraphrase, is to find the economical requirements to implement something to make it, as you know, in a sense, product market fit. So innovation is when you can figure out both value in use for the user, but a sustainable value for the person supplying the invention. So innovation now, tech is the dev part, innovation is the usage part. I'm referring to Schumpeter here. And then he highlights the last phase, diffusion, which is ultimately adoption, people adopting mainstream adoption. So if you now dissect ChatGPT as a phenomenon, what they did is they did a double whammy on innovation and diffusion. They did no invention. They did no invention in Schumpeter's terminology. The tech invention was done in many different things, but they strung that together into a model that had value in use. And then they figured out a way as a UX to have diffusion. So the simple user interface that means everybody can use it, and the uptake, that's about diffusion. Innovation is about finding the way to do it. Maybe that is ChatGPT 3, but arguing now this is not innovation. According to Schumpeter, correct, it's not innovation. The invention behind is 5 or 10 different inventions strung together.
Yeah, but that's normally what happens with any kind of innovation.
The point what I'm trying to make here is, as long as we are using these terminologies broadly or loosely, we can have an argument to death about if something is innovation or not. But if you peel the onion and use Schumpeter's definition, what is invention here? What is the economical innovation? And what is diffusion? Then I can make total sense and explain what we can dissect. Where were the inventions that goes into ChatGPT? And then we can take transformers, but that's not enough. You need to go behind the transformer even. You follow the logic.
Yeah, it's an awesome example. And it's nice to have names to use.
Semantics is super important to...
I agree with you. So often when I've talked about things, that's semantics. No, but actually our brains...
This is matters. And why does it matter? Because it matters when we as an enterprise trying to now innovate. And if we use a very broad stroke definition, we are ending up focusing on the wrong stuff. Like when we're focusing on the tech, that's the invention part. When we're focusing on how will they use the tech, that is the innovation part. And when we are focusing on how to scale this up in a large enterprise, that's the diffusion part. So innovation now has 3 separate parts with very different work in front of you.
How you see it, because that's when we meet a lot of clients, they have a head of innovation. And in my brain is that what innovation should not be headed of one person, have to be like embedded in the company.
But so that's another topic, I think we should add that, because should you have a separate unit, part of the organization that do inventions or innovations, or should it be part of everyday kind of development teams or research team that you do have? I actually add that to a list, right? Because I think we can really, think about pros and cons about, having separate teams or part of the normal way of working, you call it that, right?
Is R&D dead? Do we need to incorporate R&D in every day?
Okay.
And we start with the data teams, because still today we don't know what to do with our data teams. So
awesome. Very welcome here.
Thank you.
Dacil Hernandez. I hope I pronounced that correct.
Close.
Okay, thank you. Director of Data and AI at, I guess, for the Northwest Europe region at Nagarro. And if you just look at your background, you have a very extensive list with a lot of really prominent positions for the last, I guess, 20
Don't count.
per number of years.
Don't count.
But it's awesome to have you here. You're also a very, I think, evangelist, if you call it, a person that can speak about things in an easy to way and engaging way as well, which I think is a skill that more people should have. So awesome to have you here. Very welcome.
I'm so happy to be here.
But who is Dacil? How would you describe yourself?
God. Actually, I can always start with the topic that people ask me where I'm from, and because I don't sound Swedish, and I say I'm not, actually. So I'm from Spain.
Where in Spain?
I'm from Gran Canaria. And
That's
the second question that comes is, what you're doing here in Sweden?
I actually go to Gran Canaria. I've done so for 17 years straight.
Oh my God.
So
It's a beautiful place.
I know Gran Canaria very well.
Perfect. No, and actually that's something that I think it's the first time I'm going to say this out loud. Normally I joke about it and I say, it wasn't the weather. And I met a Swedish person. Of course, I was 19 when I moved to Sweden. But actually this is not the whole truth. And one of the things that made me leave my country was because at that time in Spain, women were put in boxes. So I have to be a wife or being an independent woman. It wasn't in scope. And my family, my mom and dad were really women in the kitchen. They have rules, what I was supposed to do or not to do. And I didn't, I hate people putting me in boxes.
Yeah, right.
And I think that's one of the main reasons why I left. Not because only I was in love with the Swedish guy.
That's the easy way to explain.
But
that's how you said it to your mother.
Yeah, exactly. But for me, and this is something that is bringing me as we're today, because today I work in a tech. I've been doing this for a while. And always, if you look at me, I don't fit, you cannot put me in a box. And still today, I fight about, but you're not technical enough, or you're not business enough, or you're not, and I'm not. I'm in the middle of so the way I am and how define me is that for me is we should not be putting people in boxes. That's
if you love football, you're a free midfielder.
Exactly. I don't like football, but I know what you mean. So this is a little bit of me, and I love. I'm one of the luckiest one that work in a technology that I love. I love analytics and data. I actually think it's super fun. Yeah. I love my job. Well. Can you imagine that? It's like.
And what was your first encounter with data and analytics, or where did you find this passion?
I actually, when I moved to Sweden, my dream was to be a journalist. I wrote a lot. I actually love to write and tell stories. I'm a storyteller. But Swedish, oh my God, it's a horrible language to learn. So I said, okay, I can do economics. So I went to Handelshögskolan in Göteborg and studied statistics. And I fell in love with statistics. It was like, oh my God, you can lie and still people believe you. So that was like...
Disraeli, there's lies, damn lies, and statistics.
So for me, I started study statistics. I became a statistician. In my time, we didn't data scientists didn't exist, so I'm a statistician. I started work with the analytics and data, and at some point you figure out that shit in, shit out.
Yes, or garbage in, garbage out. Yeah, it's a common
So
phrase.
I started working, I think I wrote my first data script at some point where I figured out that we need to rewrite the way the data was coming in. And that's how I actually started learning SQL. And I became a data manager. And people that know me know that I lie in my first job. Everybody knows this because I've told it many times. Yeah. And what I like of data analytics is that the kind of insights where I'm an analytical person. Every time I see something, I figure out, why we're doing what we do. For example, it's stupid question. When you go to the petrol station and you see that sausages really rolling around when you're going to buy a hot dog, I wonder, somebody decide how many sausages have to be there for me to want to buy
optimize it
one.
directly.
That's me thinking. I don't think nobody's doing
analytically, what is the optimal number of sausages at the same time? So they're not too cold, they're not too warm, they're not overcooked.
Exactly.
Not too old.
So this is my brain. That's how I act.
Optimization algorithm for the sausages rolling.
So this is how my brain. And for me, when I go to a client, or when I was working in the companies I would work, we were like internal consultants. So I was driving data analytics team from group level to support. And every time they had a problem, for me it's like, okay, how I can fix this? I remember we had a really funny story. We had an issue that we need to update. Data was coming too slow, and this company or this department told me we need to have real-time data. That's what they say. You have to be real-time. And I sit and they're like, what do you do with that data? And they're like, yeah, we need to send a letter, a paper letter. I say, how often you send that to Posten? 3 times a day. So real time is 3 times a day. That's what you're saying. So what you need is to have the data ready before you send it in that batch. Because I work in finance, as everything's batch. So that's the way my brain reacts. When you tell me a problem, I dissect it down in pieces. Like, wait a minute, what is actually the problem that you're talking about? And for me, that's the way data analytics should be doing, focusing in what is that you want to solve and how you're going to do it. And often you get lost in this AI or super fancy. And I had a motto in my old job: keep it simple, keep it real. Of course, we can do neural networks, blah, blah, blah. But it maybe just an if sats. If this, then that. Makes sense.
It's Occam's razor, right? So, keep it simple, stupid, or keep it simple and smart, or whatever you want.
I said keep it simple, keep it real.
Okay.
Keep it simple. Keep it simple, we know. Keep it real. What do you mean with that?
Be honest. Because often as a data science organization, you want to do fancy things. And you want to do, you have to sound super fancy. And you need to be real to yourself, real to the people you're doing this for. So you have to be, that's for me, real.
Yeah, so that's another T-shirt. Keep it simple, keep it real.
I can do a lot of T-shirts. I love
we have been collecting T-shirt quotes for 2.5 years, 3 years.
But I think it's also interesting that, people are tech-driven in saying you want to have real-time data from people that are not tech people potentially, because they heard the buzzword, and they've seen some of the sales pitches that whatever kind of companies say, and we support stream-based real-time data, and you can build blah blah. And then someone that may not understand the technical details say, we need to have real-time data, but they don't understand the use cases they want to have it for, right?
Yeah. And
by the way, then the technicality and the cost of doing proper real time versus doing something 3 times a day is quite different.
Yes, it is. And every time our CTO went to a conference, we were like, okay, now what? And I remember when she came, I said, we need to have, I heard something called search-driven analytics. That's before GPT, everything. It was called search-driven analytics. You just write and you get that data.
Like ThoughtWorks.
Yes,
types,
exactly.
Their proposition.
And I think it makes sense. Let me look at the behind the scenes. We pass PowerPoint. And I look at this, we don't have any metadata in our data. So how the hell are we going to search it if we don't even can log it? So I told the CTO, you know what, super nice, but until our data is ready, we cannot do this. And it's like, and she's like, what do you mean metadata? And we're like, okay. Let's step back a little bit.
But from university, what are the major work steps here? You worked in a couple of different large organizations in different roles, right?
What do you mean?
I mean, so you sort of been skimming fast now that we sort of you were managing a data analytics teams, etc., etc. Where was this?
I was working in a company called Intrum. It's one of the largest debt collection. They call it credit services, but they do
debt collection and credit services.
Yes.
Intrum, usually Intrum Justitia.
But they left them. They merged. They changed the name, but Intrum Justitia became Intrum.
Yes.
And I was heading the data analytics team. We had a centralized team with data scientists, and one of the things we did that industry that things have to happen at the right moment. When you don't pay your bill and we need to trigger action on you, we need to take first a rate action. If you don't have any money, there's no point of sending you to bailiff or whatever. So our team was optimizing the process how to ensure that our clients got the money. And it's a matter of timing. Because any action costs money. So my team was, it sounds boring, but it was really exciting because one of the things that I always try to understand is the people we need to help is the balance between helping keep people to pay and ensure that our clients got the money. So it's always this balance. So that's what I was doing we started with one data scientist. We didn't have anything. And in the end, we have 6 people supporting 25 countries. And it was really awesome. It was really cool.
And after this was Intrum. What's the next step after Intrum?
After Intrum, I changed to a company called Lowell. That is like Intrum, but Lowell is it's a long story. It's like, oh my God. And in Lowell, I was, they hired me they had 6 countries in the Nordics, or 5. And my job was to consolidate in one. Because one of the things I'm really good at is making teams work together. And one of the things I've done in my whole career is have digital teams or hybrid teams. So when COVID hit and people said, I don't know how to do meetings online, like that's been my career my whole life. I don't know how to have my people, I don't know how to fika in a room.
So you like Lowell was very much, you had a distributed team in
all my career. Credit Safe, my first job, in Lindorf at that time, we were called Intrum. Yeah. So I have people in Finland, Estonia, Norway, I have Spain. Yeah. So for me, working hybrid have been my reality my whole career. And it takes time, and it's a different mindset. You have to have clear goals for the team.
Can we stop here a little bit?
Yes.
Like, I think this is a super valuable lessons learned. What matters when you drive hybrid teams versus what matters when you drive a physically present teams? Can you put some words on that?
Yes.
What is sort of your life lessons here?
One of the important things you have to do is a lot of when you do the fika, you normally talk job as well. So it's important as a manager in a distributed team or hybrid never to do small talks with the employees you have close to you. So it's really important that fika is fika, free time, you talk about weather or sports or whatever. Don't mix that. So it's important that nobody's left out of any information. The coffee break information that is crucial in a lot of companies. You need to be really careful not doing that.
That's an interesting advice. So you're saying, I think I understand where you're coming from completely. So when you have a distributed team, you cannot give an advantage to one part of the team simply because they happen to be in the same neighborhood as you are. Exactly. Because actually you are undermining the whole setup.
Exactly.
Wow. So actually you need to be very mindful of steering. If you want to have fika conversations, you need to figure that out as a virtual fika conversation.
And if you have never been working in a hybrid team, and you used to have your team and talk to them on site and have that kind of, you go and talk to somebody and discuss somebody else's in the coffee break, you need to stop with doing that. Another thing is also you have to, for me was every year we had something like a motto, like a sentence that everybody was driving
a
theme for the year.
Yeah.
Could be automation, or we had one day, I think, and I use pictures always. I remember I had one year we used Wall-E, this robot, because we had a lot of things to clean, so we optimized. So it was, and it was like that connection where the team, everybody knew where we're going, and it visualizes. So I had to put it so you could see it, no matter where you were. So ensure that because you have the big strategy that maybe is coming in, but you need to break it down in something that you can relate, even if you're not present in the same office or you are from home. And even, have that Wall-E print, like a screen in your computer to make that. So for me, it was important to have.
The second lesson here is that communication becomes even more difficult. So in some ways, it needs to be even more simple.
Yes.
It needs to be even more, visual, like all tangible. In any different ways, the complex, fluffy strategy we need to find our motto, our theme, or that
you're gonna have a T-shirt every year with the goals for the team, and everybody have that T-shirt.
Yeah, and actually, it's a good one because
that's a good idea.
because if it's not sharp enough so it can fit on a T-shirt, it's not going to be simple enough.
Oh my God, I love it. I will steal that.
But you mentioned the hybrid team. So is there a difference between having hybrid teams and teams working remotely, from their home? Are they actually working like in offices in Estonia and an office in Sweden, and then you have some people working like locally and some people working remotely from home, or what do you mean with hybrid team?
In the beginning, everybody was in offices before COVID hit. I still had a lot of people working from home. We never forced people to go to the. Doesn't make sense. For me, in hybrid team is when you have people that are not from your same culture, not in the same place you are. Because also it's a difficult when you have people from different international or different countries. It does also get even more messy.
Challenge, yeah.
So in a hybrid team is when you don't have everybody on the same place that you are. Like you manage it. And often you have a lot of organizations where everybody is the same. I don't know, people try to hire people that is the same that everybody is there. So you have that kind of, and there's a lot of companies talking about it. Diversity inclusion, because that's happening. And being able to be a hybrid approach, you can hire people that maybe you're not so used to have, because you don't need to. It's a different approach of hiring.
So it's
and
diverse
working.
people, both in terms of where they're working, but also the culture and the attitude and gender and what.
And you have engineers with business analysts and
But this is very important because once again, semantics, right? We use the word hybrid teams. But it's actually, we are dissecting it now. It has to do with locality. It has to do with culture. And of course, then some are working in offices. So there are groups of people in the same place. And then you have one or two guys that sit completely on their own in their home office.
yes.
And all this is sort of, the umbrella term could be hybrid teams. But all this creates complexity or creates messiness, or whatever you want to call it. Or something to manage. Or puts managerial constraints and opportunities how we need to do it differently, potentially.
And it's the same, like a simple thing like when you're going to do an event or some fun after work thing with people that today it's easy because you have a lot of cool games that you can do. I don't know if you've seen it. There's a really cool game where 3 people are steering a ship and one do up and down and one go right and left, but nobody is seeing where the ship is. It's actually really funny.
It's just a digital game.
So you could have teams doing this.
And they need to communicate.
Yeah.
And the other guy sits over there and sees, oh my God.
So this way of you can have remember we had often a quiz where people are supposed to, normal quiz of football or movies. So all this kind of, and today is possible because you have that kind of fun digital approach. We are old, but our kids today, they interact digital all the time with games and things.
But if you, interesting. And since you have a lot of experience working with people remotely or in hybrid mode or whatever you call it, and I guess you had an easy time to move into the pandemic period as well, since we're already used to it. But some people, though, find it hard to work remotely. I mean, some people say they want to work remotely, but potentially some people, and most people, I'm not sure if most people, but a lot of people can work remotely. But I would argue it requires some level of self-discipline.
Oh my God, not some level.
Right?
You have to have discipline.
But what do you do if some people do not?
My belief is human beings, you can change. You need to have consistency. I think it's 30 days to create a habit, I think it's called. So you need to force yourself to create an habit and do something that I don't even need 30 days, but so many times that it becomes a routine. And of course, how people maybe will never adjust, but the routine of you going up, taking the bus, you had to catch the bus and coming home. That's a routine that you do 5 days a week. So you need to create routines to allow you to make the same, your brain process like
experience when working remotely, so to speak, right?
And that's creating routines. And it seems stupid.
How do you avoid people? I mean, for some people that are ambitious and they, that they will do that and they will work hard. But some people will simply say, I do what I have and then I watch some TV shows. How can you avoid having people doing that?
If you have that kind of people, you will force them to come to the office.
Yes, right.
No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, but it could be.
But
it could be a solution.
But
that's a matter of trust, and you don't know. It's the same. We have the same discussion the other day with I'm old, but somebody was more older than me, and he said, "But how do you know they're working?" I said, "How do you know they're working in the office? They can be sitting like this, don't doing anything. How do you know just because you have a physical person in the room that their brain is connected, for real?"
But I think this goes down to behavioral change and personality, and you can take the same question and I can place it in the context of my two oldest boys. So one guy, the oldest, he's 17. He sort of cracked the code. How do you study? Which means he has the self-discipline. He knows how to game the teachers and understand to sort of suck out what are they really wanting me to study and all that. And my he's a 17-year-old, and my middle guy, he's 15, and he hasn't cracked the code. And basically now, this question you're asking now is super, super relevant in this context now. So how do I help him to change his fundamental behavior to have self-discipline to study? And the problem here is not even that he's not studying, but he's studying in the wrong way. Yeah. He hasn't cracked the code. And what do I do as a father, or what do I do as a manager? I mean, like it's a very, very hard game. But in the end, I think your advice is correct. How do I create routines? How do I create patterns? And with my older son, I can give him a pattern on this level, and then he can figure it out. But with my middle kid, what I'm doing here, I'm starting micromanaging the patterns. So I give an example. I tell him, like, you're not going to learn if you're only reading. You need to write it down. You need to do your math. So what have you done now? You're lying in your bed reading. No. You need to sit at your desk. And I need to see now here. And here I become very, very forceful, disciplinary, that, okay, I'm going to go down now and do the dinner, and then I'm going to go down and I'm going to check you that you have done this. And I'm not checking him to be an asshole. I'm checking him 30 times
but
until that becomes a pattern for him. That's what I'm trying to, I think that's what you mean. Yeah. So creating a routine is the answer.
But you have to have small change. When you have somebody like that, so don't start with everything. Say like this, okay, for 30 days, say for 2 weeks, I will wake up, I will sit at my computer at 8 o'clock. That's it. That's the only thing I want to change. So every morning, I log in at 8 o'clock. And if I do it for 5 days, 10 days, I can get gamification. We love, that gamification. So if the company doesn't give it, but you can give you a treat. You can agree with yourself, if I'm going to do this, I give you that treat. Because that's how our brains work. You do something good and get reward, like the dogs. There's no different behavior from us, or when you come to teach a dog to do something.
Pablo's dog kind of thing.
So small routines, if you try to change everything, it will not happen. So when you achieve that, and for your brain is already 8 o'clock, then you take a next challenge. Okay, but I need to be able to
do all the emails at 8:15.
So that's small targets that you can reach to change the behavior. After a while, I remember when I started 5 years ago, I decided to start with doing yoga in the morning. And for me, it was like, oh my God, it's not happening. So what I started, 5 minutes every day for 30 days. 5 minutes, that's it. I woke up in the morning, I did the 2 series of sun salutation. That's what I did. Now I can do 30 minutes, 40 minutes, depends. And it's like brushing my teeth. I just do it. I don't have to think about it. It's part of my
But some people
routine.
do, or are the type of people that have routines and love that. And, I'm that type of person. I have my morning routines and my work routines and whatnot. But some people may not be. Can you still make them?
Everybody has routine. Maybe they call it something different, but human beings, and there's a lot of studies about that, we have a routine. When we eat, maybe the routine can be chaos for you because you have by the clock. But even people that only eat when they're hungry.
That's a routine.
That's a routine.
But it's interesting now because I think one of the best books on this topic of behavioral change is Atomic Habits. Have you read the book?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so there's a book that is in simple but fun and good engaging ways explaining how you change behavior. And he highlights atomic habits. And all the stuff that we are talking about now is ultimately down to the mechanism, psychology and everything, changing an identity, all this that goes into changing a behavior. Now, when you have that, if you understand that playbook, then you can apply that to, do you want to stop smoking? Or do you want to foster the most efficient remote worker? So I think I really subscribe to understanding behavioral change, and then you need to figure out how to apply that to the context or whatever problem you're and what you're saying now, I think is hardcore down to psychology and hardcore down to those kind of
and
fundamentals.
Incentives.
Incentives, yeah.
Because if somebody don't want to do something, you need to create some kind of incentive to. Unfortunately, that's how it is.
But everybody
else.
also.
For example, do you have some incentives that you give your employees?
But say, for example, this. I remember we had a culture in a company I was working with, one of my first companies. I will not say which one. That people were afraid to say they did a mistake. It was embedded. It was like in there. And every time a mistake would happen, nobody learned because we pretended it didn't happen. So I created like in a game where every year we go to the worst mistake of the year, and that person that person got a dinner ticket. You could go for dinner with your wife or your partner, whatever. The funny thing, people were fighting about which mistake was the biggest, and we were dissecting that mistake to prove that you can win the prize. No, that wasn't a big mistake because we only have to change this, and so in that game we start learning about our mistakes. And it sounds stupid, but in the beginning, my team, they was the developers.
The boss must think you were mad.
They were thinking, you're crazy. But it was so much fun. And it became like, it's okay to do mistakes and you acknowledge them. And instead of, so that was a gamification where I tried to change the behavior of not telling that you did a mistake.
It's about having a forgiving culture in some way as well. And you promote that by simply having some incentives, as you say, of an award of the worst mistake. And you would then potentially think that people will simply do more mistakes, but that's not really what happens, right? It
never happened because you have you want to do your good job.
Yes.
So everybody knows that it was a way to everybody was in the game of the game.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it's a little bit of because in the beginning I tried to say, okay, if you don't acknowledge your mistake, you will never learn. That means that you will do it again. That it is what it is. Or if you don't tell it, or you pretend it didn't happen.
If you don't tell it, if you pretend it didn't happen, your colleague will do the same mistake.
Exactly. And if you wipe it under the cover or carpet or whatever this is saying about, putting your hand in this or head in the sand or wipe it under the carpet, then it will happen again, as you say.
Yeah.
And if you don't have a culture where it's okay to speak about this, then you won't learn from it. And I think this is also an example of how you avoid that and then simply give a award for the worst mistake. It's awesome.
It's a fun thing, but also it's gamification works.
Yeah, I love gamification. For me, I know it's a computer telling me that I run faster than yesterday, but I like it. I like that when you get the fireworks, when you get a liver. I know that it's fake, but my brain doesn't care. I'm as happy when somebody is saying that. So that's a little bit of, I love that kind of technology analytics make people happy, and that has a really nice way to and that's how all these things happen.
Perhaps we should also move. You've spoken about Nagarro a number of times.
Yes.
And perhaps we should speak a bit about what is Nagarro and what attracted you to the company.
Nagarro is a digital engineering company. We help clients to achieve actually innovation for real.
Inventions or innovation? Sorry.
Innovation.
Innovation. Okay.
We are listed in Germany. I think I have today 20,000 employees in 32 countries.
And it's a big company.
Yeah, and we joke about it because we are of 20,000 and maybe 18,000 engineers. So we are really engineering heavy. And one of the things that I love about Nagarro is they have that policy called work from anywhere. That is for real.
Spotify has the same, right? But they probably had it. You probably had it before.
Oh my God, it's been forever. Yeah. So we have a motto saying that we make distance irrelevant for intelligent people. And today, when you go to our intranet and you need to search for somebody, you don't see where they are. They remove the location.
So this is behavioral, really, truly in the culture. If we think this is irrelevant, it shouldn't say which office.
So it's a little bit challenging when you have to book a meeting. You have 5 different time zones, so you need to ask, what time zones are you? But we actually truly remove it. And what I like about Nagarro is that we do things that are, every time I see a solution we have done, I'm like, oh my God, we have done that? I'm impressed about the things we do.
What do you do, by the way?
We help from everything from creating, for example, one of our biggest clients is a Sabloy. So if you think about when you open the door with the card in the hotel, that software system how we built.
So both the hardware and the software? Or?
We only do we do engineering. We don't do products, or we don't own any. We have something we call accelerators, so we can actually reuse a lot of things what we have done, but we don't have any software or products that we built.
So you just provide the engineering
the solution itself. We can start from, say that you have, you want to do implement an AI solution to see how much food you throw away in the plane. So we created a solution where you take a picture of the trail, you see how much it is more chicken or bread or whatever, and then that information is processed to be able to help to optimize the food waste. For example, on everything from if we need to have the embedded solution, the IoT connection, we do everything from start to the end.
So if you take the Sabloy example, which is of course both hardware, like this is the card, is the mechanics of the lock, is the plastic, and then it's the software, blah blah blah. We upload. Are you working on the solution end to end?
We bring partners
together. So you can orchestrate the end-to-end chain.
Yeah. For example, we talk about supply chain optimization, or now we're doing metaverse for the industry. And so we have created, we have done, we call it Inaverse, where actually we want to demo this in the Data Innovation Summit. Oh. So we should come to our booth to see our metaverse solution, where we try to integrate a new technology to help, for example, in the industry when you need to break down an engine and you need to really, go that is maybe an environment that is heavy that you cannot do it for training purposes. Maybe you need to train how to assemble the machine, and you cannot do it in the environment you have to do it. So you can actually use the metaverse to train your brain to do this.
Tooling then?
Also we have an extra, all the kind of. We call it connected worker. We have an application with Google Glasses that you can, a mechanic can get help from elsewhere to fix something.
And how have you organized the business? Do you have different industry verticals, and then you have different technology horizontals?
Yes, we have. If you go to the website, you will see we have the automotive, manufacturing space, telecom, BFSI, transport logic, and then we have some horizontals where I work, for example, in data and AI. We support technology horizontals in all the aspects.
You are in the data analytics horizontal.
Yes, and the funny thing about now is that if you need to fix something, we will fix it because we have knowledge of domain and technological. And if we see a piece that is missing because it's an automotive industry, but we need some in finance because it's a feature that is about payments or something. So we can bring that too. So our projects we bring people from everywhere. And it's actually really fun. And that's something also interesting about Nagarro, that the project, we call it, they are like MDs. The project manager owns the project, call it project CDO. So the CEO. So the project manager owns the resources and the project. And they only be measured if the client is happy. So we measure by... if you under 90, people are upset if we get
satisfaction.
Yeah.
But of course, this is one of the key things when you have a large consultancy. How do you organize the resources in all these different dimensions that are needed in a cross-functional? There are cross-functional problems we're solving now.
Everything is cross-functional.
Yeah. So how does it work in practice? If you find it. Give us an example. If you have a potential new clients, how do you get sort of organized? How does that work?
Well, normally if we say that it's a domain-specific client that is from the automotive space, and we start talking about, we have some senior level people. I come up with my knowledge on data and AI, and then we bring somebody that knows an engineer from manufacturer, from automotive space. And in that discussion, maybe we say, wait a minute, we need to have e-commerce as well, because I think it's an issue about the mobile or how you have the website. And then we bring these people together, and then we prepare a proposition for the client, and if they accept it, then we own the resources, so we bring resources really fast, and we deliver it.
And so basically, you're having a shaping situation together with the client, and the shaping is to a proposal, but ultimately the proposal highlights what are the key capabilities needed, and then you put a team together, and you put your client CIO, CTO, or he becomes the boss of the cross-functional Nagarro solution, so to speak.
So you combine it with people from the client as well?
Of course, we always do it doesn't make sense to go, and there's not a lot of companies that give you a project and go yourself, and we talk about 6 months.
How do you think about having these kind of cross-functional teams and the competences you need, though? Some people like to have people that have rather broad roles that take on, I am a back-end engineer and I do all in back-end engineering. Or some people are going super specific and I only do .NET or Java or Python engineering and whatnot. And do you have any thoughts about, how people should be able to take on projects that have either rather broad, different tech stacks or competences, or do you want to have narrow people?
This is a good question. And in my head, it's a little bit of, in some part of a transformation, you need experts in that narrow thinking because it's really specific. And it's a little bit, I always compare like when you say you're going to build a house and you need to have somebody that's drawing the house, so you're an architect, you will draw the house. But that guy is not the same guy that actually go and build the house or do the plumbing or do the carpenter or the electricity. So you don't want to have a plumber doing your cables. So in some industries, in some areas maybe you can combine some skills, but in my head, in tech, different things have different skills and different knowledge that you need to know. So of course you can have data engineers that are really good in other areas or that have been a little bit outside, but I don't believe in the / professions. In my head is you should have the right skill for the right moment. If you need a senior in the beginning, then you can transfer to a more maybe medium person because the complexity is less. So in my head, when I start working in a consulting company, I think that's what companies want. That kind of agile flexibility. We will solve problem X, and then we will bring the people that we need at the moment, and that will be handled by the consulting company. But a lot of clients want to have that superhuman being that can do everything.
You even wrote an article on this.
Yeah, I know. I do it because I was so surprised.
But what was that? The point of the article is that we get attached to the relationship of one person. So instead of allowing the full muscle of the consultancy and playing with the experts in the right way, orchestrating the experts. Oh no, I like Kalle, and Kalle should be full-time with us. And by the way, he should be in our office.
And he should be able to do that.
And now Kalle needs to do things he has never done before.
Exactly.
Because he knows us.
And that's, Do
you think that's the major... so your article is more or less a little bit like putting the finger on this and a little bit surprised.
Yeah, it was like this.
This is what the clients want. What? Do you want this?
Yeah. And this... you see sometimes job description that is like, you don't find that kind of people. They doesn't exist. Maybe you can have a plumber that is electrician and also an architect. But so for me, why in some industries you never do that, but in tech, just because you know SQL doesn't mean that you know other languages.
But still, there are, you can be too generalist type of people, and I think a lot of companies, as you say, are, and hire people for that, or try to hire people for that. But you can also, I would argue, be too specialists and perhaps only work with a very, very specific thing. And then,
but you have a lot of specialists. Then together, you need teams. Teams create. It's not only Khaled that can do everything. For example, one of the things that I created in my head when I started working in analytics, that moment where it's only Khaled that knows how this works. That script that is running, that is fetching all the data, is so complicated. If and answer, so it's only him that knows. And for me, that makes sense. So democratization of data freedom, where you build it in a way that anybody can go in and you can pass it to somebody else that knows that piece, because it's easy to do.
But okay, is this how to think about this? Question. Do we need to think in one way about this? If I imagine we are a startup or a small company where we only have resources to solve it with 3 or 4 or 5 guys, i.e. we need to kind of be more full stack, we need to be more superhuman, versus when you have the Nagarro or when you have the enterprise where you can start specializing. Yeah. So isn't this also a little bit like question mark? Isn't how do you need to think about this when you're smaller or in some phase versus when you are in a more mature or large scale?
Of course. I mean, there are these super amazing people that know a lot of things, but more likely they will have their own startup company and doing their own things. But for me, be able to have companies like Nagarro to help organizations to accelerate and make that complexity easy. And it's often, for us, it's super important that when we talk to a client, we talk about the value proposition. What is that you want to achieve with this change? And a little bit the how to, let us, the expert, to do it. Trust your Nagarro, whoever, another company. When you come in with a consulting, trust them. And they are the experts. Let them, come and help you instead of going directed to, I want to have real-time data because that's what I heard. And Nagarro is a company that, one of the things I love about Nagarro, that we actually question our clients a lot. I've been in meetings where we almost say to the client, you're wrong. That's not what you want. And it's actually really refreshing to see that we can actually do it. And say, never, you.
How do you think about this, Anders, in terms of, I think Carl Tomea was onto this. We talked about how do you do it when you are a very small team versus when you have come some way. And, he said, when I start out with only 2 or 3 guys or girls, do we need to solve both data engineering and MLOps and, sort of thing. And then when you get more mature, you can start specializing. What is your take on this?
I mean, I think what you said is really interesting, and I agree. But I think there is a balance. I think you can go too far on specialization as well. I think as a startup, of course, you need to be more of I work where it's needed kind of attitude. And as you scale, you can be increasingly specialized. That's a luxury you can afford when you have a certain scale. And that makes you more efficient potentially. But then a question becomes, if you are super specialized, and it would be fun to hear, what level you are on. If some client of yours asks for, I want to have a data engineer that works with this type of Snowflake kind of system or Databricks system, do you have different people for that, or do you have, there is some kind of limit where you say a data engineer that knows this. It's working with batch data and he's specialized in that. Or it could be batch data when working with Python, working with Databricks and working with Spark and only that and nothing else. I mean, there's always a level of, right?
For some of our data engineers, you have engineers that know a lot of tools. It's just tools or methods. So you can have somebody that have been around for a while and have tried different methods, and a lot of the things are the same. So in that, when you talk about data engineers or tools, it depends how much you have the time to try new tools and actually make sense of the tools. That's. But say, for example, if when you're going to if you go to a really nice restaurant, in the kitchen, the chef, master chef, is not peeling the potatoes. That's somebody else. And the guy doing the dessert is not doing the main course because that will make things slow. So at some point when you have to scale and work, you need to have kind of specialization. And maybe it sounds really shallow comparing this, but this is a little bit how you are able to make the right people doing the right things at the right moment in that process of when you're going to do something. And if you're lucky that you have that data engineer can do both, put it there, but doesn't make it faster if you have the same person doing this and that.
But
I don't know. I'm just saying.
But if I connect the two of these two conversations, maybe there's some learnings here, because sometimes we are doing, or the easy way out when you're using brokers or when you're hiring people and you don't really know what you're asking for, you will stoop down to as low as highlight, oh, I need a super expert in Databricks, or it's like the easy way out when you can't define the real engineering problem. So if you really think about it, what you're talking about is like the difference. Like, I need a hardcore engineer that needs streaming or knows streaming, or I know batch, or I know this type of data problem. You know what? I rather have Lalle who knows this so well, and I don't care if it's GCP, Azure, or AWS, because if we can define the problem in the right way, of course, Lalle as a data engineer is not the same guy as maybe called to me as a machine learning ops guy, because the problem we have now is that when we're using the tooling as an easy way out to explain what we need, I think that becomes a ridiculous, you need to have, someone else for 15 years experience in Snowflake. Doesn't exist.
And I agree with you. And there's a little bit tools, you learn tools.
Yeah, but isn't that the point then, that we need maybe the potato peeler in this context is like, you need to understand this is a data engineering problem, and over here is a deep neural network problem, and here is two distinct competences. Then if it's PyTorch or Spice, blah blah blah,
Scala or whatever.
Scala, whatever. Is that what you're going for?
I'm just trying to see, is it interesting to just share experiences, where the proper balance is,
And of course,
what's the proper level of generalization that you should have when hiring people, for example, or when using that at clients. So do you have, if you were to give an example perhaps of you going to hire a new type of engineer, and you can choose whatever type of engineer you want, but what's your normal, if you go more into that, okay, how do you recruit talents, and how do you put up like job ads that are as attractive and suitable as possible for you guys?
We're not there yet in Nagarro. We will change the way we do that. But before, I can give you an example. Okay. When I was working in Intrum, we want to have a Power BI developer. Mm-hmm. That's in theory what we said we want to have. Yeah. The ad never said that. So what we did, we created a really fun ad where we say that if you like data more than ice cream, don't apply to our job, because we're looking for people. So the whole ad was, remember, if you like our old ad, don't apply this time. So the whole job description was like a Venn diagram, which call it the data artist, the magician of mathematics. It was like 3 fancy words, and you. If you're there, apply to us. I never said Power BI, I never said... And why we did this, because I want to have a number of women applying. And for once, we had it were more women applying than men.
Oh, so also this is a point, like the way you talk or explain it also attracts different sexes here.
Yeah. So at that point, we found that amazing Power BI developer, but I never asked for a Power BI developer. Today, still, and we are learning, and Nagarro I hope we will change. But if you say to our ads, we have that tool, experience, skills,
tech skills,
and because that's the way our own clients ask for people or skills. If you go to staff augmentation, they will have a list of requirements, like you say, 20 years in Snowflake, but they never say this is the issue we need to solve. We have a streaming data problem, or we're going to migrate from on-prem, and we only have 6 months to do this, or we have a small budget, so we need to have a better super senior that can do this really fast, or we have all the time in the world. So you don't see that kind of. So often, when I remember when I recruited my first data scientist, and that's a mistake I did, and that's lessons learned from when you. I hired a person that I really want to have, but wasn't the person I really needed, because I didn't have enough. My data still was really crappy, so my data scientist was frustrated because he was just cleaning data and fighting with IT to get that. We didn't even have a test environment to run our own algorithm. So that frustration my data scientist had for a year, that was on me. Because hire who you need at the moment you are.
And it's also a bit annoying, I must say, if you hire people that perhaps are a bit more junior and come from university, and they have courses and education that is so focused on, for example, the hottest type of ML, machine learning algorithms, and then they come to a company and see, there is a lot of noisy data here. We need to build some environment. We need to have some kind of automated build process and have DevOps in place, and all these kind of things that actually do not teach in education. And for me, at least, it's a bit frustrating, right?
Yeah. And at that point, I had a budget for one person to hire. Now, lessons learned, I will hire a data engineer, not a data scientist.
Yes.
Even my goal was to create AI or start doing machine learning.
But at the point in time, the data engineer was the most useful skill right there, right then.
Exactly. But I spent it in the data scientist. I was super upset for so long time. I'm frustrated. So became a data engineer, by the way, because he had to do all that by himself. So,
do you have a good way to describe the differences between a data engineer and a data scientist?
In my head, yes. But maybe I'm totally incorrect. It will be like...
Please try it. I can rewind later if you want.
For me, a data scientist should be focused in making data live, like make it something had happened with that data. So data scientist's job is to create value of that data. A data engineer, in my head, is the one responsible to make that data be accessible for the data scientist, that is quality ensures, that is good, and that makes and is there. So for me, it's a data engineer's job is not to create value of data. The data engineer is to ensure that it's enabling that data to become information and then blah, 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 insights. That's for me clear. I'm not expecting a data engineer to understand what particular data is saying.
I would phrase it differently, but I understand your...
maybe simplifying, but for me, it's clear.
Yeah. Now, but for me, I think it's interesting to just think about engineering versus science in general to start with. And for me, at least, engineering, I mean, it is similar to what you said, but the value thing I did react to when you said that. And for me, an engineer is actually someone that have the purpose to build a product. And the product is something that creates value for some user. So I think for any type of engineer, purpose for their work is to build some product. And the product can be some data pipeline or something that is related to the data itself. And then it's more a data type of engineer, or it can be a front end or back end, or it can be so many different things. But the goal for an engineer is to build products that becomes of value for some user. And for a scientist, I would argue potentially it's the purpose is different. The purpose is to build knowledge. So then the knowledge then is necessary to know how to do something, perhaps to build a product. So the science is necessary to build a product, but it's not the purpose of a data scientist. So that's the potential difference. But
you think engineering in term like engineers,
yes.
But the data engineer. Sorry, my ear is hurting.
Oh.
Yeah, is and again, all these professions, data scientists, when was coming? I think it was Gartner that started with the data scientist as a job. When did it start?
When did we had this question before? Like, when did terminology data scientist first emerge?
At least 10 years ago, right? So but it was like a growing, long-term.
Yeah, because the interesting thing, we've been software engineers and we've been all that. And is the terminology data engineer older or younger than software engineer?
Must be younger, right?
I think so.
I think
now you have somebody calling analytics engineer. Have you heard
MLOps
that? Engineer. So
AI engineer.
And in data decision scientists.
Yes.
They're not even data scientists anymore. So
what do you think about this? Do you think, because this is another discussion we had on the podcast a bit before, there is a potential increased specialization in job roles? Doesn't matter. But I think what you're saying is really true, because we are seeing like a proliferation or an increase in number of different specialized roles being there. You could be a data evangelist, or you can be a data. Sorry, do you find it?
62 and then 85. I mean, like data analysis, and then.
But that's not data.
But I remember, I think.
It's not the data scientist.
I think I remember it was in Gartner.
But in 1985, a lecture given by Chinese academics in Beijing, this guy uses the first term.
Yeah, but okay, when it became mainstream, we're talking
that's
2000.
More interesting,
That is not interesting.
But no, because I remember I was in a Gartner event in London a long time ago, where just introduced the data scientists and the citizen data scientists.
Yes.
Remember?
Citizen data scientist in Gartner.
They did that differentiation about, I still don't get it.
And they still cannot explain it.
I still don't get it. Who is that the person? What is doing that?
But do you think it's a good thing that we have now like so many? I mean, we are potentially seeing an increased proliferation of these kind of roles related to engineering or data science in different ways. For me, I mean, it's a clear trend. Would you agree to start?
Yeah.
And do you think it's good, or do you think it's gone too far already, or do you
a good question, because all these new roles create this. It's like we against them. It put people in boxes. Back to the boxing thing. What is and every time you have that kind of role that narrows, because every new role is smaller and smaller.
Yes.
It means that if you don't have a clear handover of this, when you pass, it will be super difficult to manage. I guess that there's a need of that specialization and sense of belonging, because data engineer was too big, so I need to be ML engineer, or I have to be
DevOps engineer,
integration engineer. So,
which I hate, by the way. I think the worst thing you could hire for is a prompt engineer, because it will die out very quickly.
Even Goran is a prompt engineer.
He's a prompt evangelist, perhaps.
No, I don't know. If people are happy, I think, it's difficult for, first of all, start at the universities. Now you can, for me, on a crucial part of data science is domain expertise. When you have that domain knowledge, is one of the parts of the Venn diagram that is important. But you come out from the university being a data scientist with a zero knowledge of any domain. But you call yourself data scientist. Now it changed. So I don't know.
And I thought we need to raise the status, I think, for engineers as well, because I would argue that I am more of an engineer than scientist, even though I have a long academic background. I think engineering is more fun, and I think sometimes it's not being elevated or respected as much as it should.
But I'm not sure, because the trend. First, it was sexy to be data scientist, and now if you're on the machine learning side, you want to be an AI engineer.
What is that?
And I mean, like, we can have this long conversation around ML engineer, or I think if you really want to dissect it properly, you need to go back to Anders' starting point here, definition of engineering versus definition of science, and as an anecdote, Mikael Klingvall that I work with, who is a sort of role-playing fanatic, he who loves Lord of the Rings, and you know how Tolkien makes these maps over, you know, the world, the ring lore, right? So Mikael had so much fun making a map which he called the realm of data science, basically plotting in the whole organization of a large enterprise from a data science perspective and understanding all the different nuances of data science. So, and he is sort of a PhD in organizational sociology, so he has that then accurately, in my opinion, dissected the pie chart of what are the different capabilities of a data scientist, right? And then you have like the engineering part is one part, the sort of management consultant part who can understand what the domain problem is one part. So there are many facets here, and I think once again, if you're not into the semantics and going down deeper, they're all data scientists. There's a huge difference between Carl Tomé or someone like Anders, who are engineers at heart, who understands math and all this and build products from it, versus someone who's in the pursuit of knowledge based on, insights and this. And for me, it's been super clear where one of the biggest aha moments I have, even when talking to Anders, is when we talk about analytics versus operational AI. In the simple term that, are you here to use algorithms as part of a product? You're building something where you're actually creating a product, a recommender system in Spotify, whatever. Or are we here coming from the strand of BI, and we are creating insights, and we have we have forward-looking insights and prediction, but our end game is to provide an insight, knowledge, right? So I hire a data scientist to dig into the data in order to present insight to the board. If you want to put that in production and make that into a product, there's a hugely different game here. Yes. So for me, this is this design, engineering versus for products versus insights for insights, and within this whole scope now, this becomes really, imagine how confusing this is for someone who's trying to hire these roles, who is not into this game. It must be impossible.
It's super. And I have both hired data engineers and data scientists, and I have been always at balance, because I learned the hard way what is actually what I need. And I remember when we're supposed to introduce the ML engineering concept, of who can be that. We have data engineers, we're data scientists, and now out of the blue we have our clients are asking for ML ops engineers. Who are they? So you need to map. Okay, is this in which box where I put you now?
But I think it's very interesting, because I can in my head make a distinction between Carl Tomé as an AI machine learning engineer and Mikael Klingvall as a data scientist, who can never be, he's definitely not an engineer in any sense. But he can clearly qualify as a data scientist. If you look now at the whole pie chart of different capabilities, he's strong over here, but he doesn't have these skills.
Yeah, no. I look at myself, I always joke of engineers are binary people. They are like black, one and zeros. I was married to one, so it was like, he's an engineer. That's the way he thinks. So I think people that engineers have, when you choose that profession, is because you're wired in one way, and that's the beauty. And I respect. I think it's a message. I think I'm a frustrated engineer. In the past, maybe I will be this. But for me, it's more of what am I going to do with this? And I like analytics because I can find pattern or things to, more of the why. For you, it's like black and white. For me, it's like all the colors that can be in the palette. And everything can happen. It's like
are we in the pursuit of knowledge, or are we in the pursuit of building a product? I come back to your simple argument.
And then analysts that have the pursuit of insights, potentially. I think that's a good...
That's a product.
It's a proper role, right? But it's not the product builder necessarily.
I see the time is flying away a bit, and we have a favorite topic that we should move into. if that's okay.
I would like to add a topic as well. A dear topic that me and Dacil have been discussing is how we can get data scientists to be better salespeople.
Oh my God, that's true.
Okay,
You
let's
took
go
me
there.
Let's go there. Okay, so first of all, give us the background and context. How can we make data scientists into better salespeople? What's the background for this?
And I would like to know, how can we make salespeople better data scientists? But
That's
let's start
hard.
with you.
That is easy. That is the easy part.
No, everything started because I reached out to Gordon and said, like, we have a lot of our consultants are, people look at salespeople like there's something bad. Your sales, and everybody should be a salesperson. We talk about
It depends on the type of salesperson, I would say.
So the discussion was like, so you have like let's say that you have, hypothetically we're talking about right now. So you have a company and you have 20 data people working for you. They are experts. They are technicians. They are the best in their breed. And now they need to go and work at the client. So partially their job is actually to do a great job for the client. The second part of the job is actually to do a great job and also socializing and therefore also sell, right? Which is basically, you don't have to sell. It's called indirect selling. By actually, representing the company and talking nicely about the company, etc., you open doors so you can sell more, right? There is another aspect. Let's say that you have, so that is one thing. If you have a company, right? That was the first, you have like a person at someone else's organization, how they can actually be better in opening the door for the company. The second one is actually, you have a lot of people that are coming on an interview and they cannot sell themselves. They are presentable, they are technical, they are super great, but somehow
it doesn't work.
Lacking, right? It doesn't work. And then you have technical sales. Wait, he's pulling. Yes, but this is good. And now you have a technical sales. So you have a person that is an engineer that is extremely good, right? His job is to be a pre-sales and a technical sales. And still he cannot sell because every time it's like the client says, like, can you do this? No. Right?
Or
Oh,
right, so
yes, I can do it in 2 minutes.
Yeah, exactly, or something like that. So that was the pretense of the conversation, and then it went somewhere else. But
no, but I ask you, can you help people that are not able, because sales is a profession in itself,
Yes,
amazing.
sure.
And I love, sometimes I'm like, wow, it blew my mind when I say salesperson in action. So how we can, when you study all tech you have, that will be included in your training how to sell.
And I would say also, and I agree actually, I mean, sales is important, but I would even try to generalize that and say communication is important. The ability for someone to convince someone of something, rhetorics, is something that I wish Swedish schools emphasize as much as American schools does. We don't do that in Sweden, and it really shows when you have an American person here speaking about the same thing as a Swedish person. I remember that from the Spotify days. It's very, very clear that you can see someone being able to speak about something in a sales way, in a immediate positive way. And a Swedish person cannot.
Convincing way, influencing way, rhetoric, building up an argument, structuring it.
But sales, in my view, doesn't necessarily mean, which some people connect it to someone that exaggerates, lie, or gives false promises. I think, for me, one of the top salesperson.
Sorry.
You're painting a picture that is sort of a cartoon.
You're painting
from
a
the
picture
50s.
of a vacuum cleaner
Yes,
salesman
exactly.
in the 1950s, locking your door, trying to get into your room to sell you a vacuum
is
cleaner,
not sales,
Electrolux.
Or a
It's a
encyclopedia.
vacuum cleaner salesperson.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, but
Because
okay,
that's
that's
a
stigma.
bad salesperson.
But the interesting
right?
thing is that people who doesn't know sales might go to this
Exactly.
picture.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I want to say sales is important, but there are bad salespeople. And sales isn't necessarily about boosting, exaggerating, and giving false promises. I would say one of the best salespeople I've met is an engineer. Kudos to Adam Kave. He was speaking a lot of meetups, etc. The first thing he did when he went up on stage and gave a speech was speak about his mistakes. Said, I've done so many mistakes in my time. Oh, I did that mistake. It was the dumbest thing I ever did. I regret it so much. He starts off speaking about all the mistakes he's made. That built confidence from the whole audience to him. He knows he's not lying. He's speaking in very
So what you want to say is that there are bad salespeople and good salespeople, and when you mean
If I wasn't interrupted all the time, I would be able to explain it.
But one of the things that I was talking to Goran about, because I remember the first time I pitched this in my own company, they said, but we're engineers. Yeah, but I don't say that you are becoming, but there's a skill you can learn. There's techniques that you can use. Yes. So see it as a complement and techniques that you didn't know they existed in your, this, it's just learn, it doesn't make the natural, but you can actually have that.
I would even emphasize this even more. I would say that, for engineers in general and data scientists or scientists in general, the ability to communicate properly, to sell your idea, to sell what your thinking is one of the most important skills you can have. It's more important than having knowledge about how Databricks works or Snowflake works or Java works or whatnot. If you cannot communicate that idea to whoever you're speaking to, you will not be successful. So I think this ability to communicate and make other people understand you and in that way sell your idea is extremely underestimated. And the one that is good at communicating will be successful as an engineer, as a scientist, as a person in general, I would argue.
And could we argue that maybe we have some of those skills being taught in some types of classes when you become when you go to take more management classes or something like that? But if I go to the hardcore scientific type education and the hardcore engineering type education, they have not really put an emphasis here at all.
Agreed.
Because I think even in Sweden, if you take some management classes or marketing classes, you will learn about some of these techniques, but not in the fields that we're now referring to that are hardcore engineering fields. That's the argument here, right?
Yes.
And that's, like you said, it's back to school. Yes. How you have to. I remember I was I was in Denmark a few years back in something called Singularity University. I don't know if you heard. I was part of the management team that went there to learn about innovation. And one of the exercises we have to do, we took a topic. And the topic that I had was if AI can take over, be a board director in a company. And I have to argue against that. And I believe that I'm pretty sure an AI can do that. So I have to learn how to argue against my own.
The steelman the argument.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it was really enlightening to see that actually it's doable. It's doable. I can actually get against myself. Yeah. And it was really fun to. And I said that's a skill that anybody can master.
So bottom line, back to school and educate themselves on rhetorical techniques or problem-solving techniques. I mean, I have another angle on this. As an engineer, I mean, you're talking to a guy now who working at ProSales, who was a sales management consulting company before, old back in the time. So I've had a lot of experience with sales, and the sort of the old school picture of sales, the one you're highlighting. This is very simple sales. This is very simple product sales where you try to convince someone of something you don't do. As soon as you move into more complex sales, which is actually the value of the product is not in the product itself, but it's how it's used and integrated. Like if you sell a complex ERP system or whatever, that is a high risk type deal, that is a completely different consultative approach, right? Now, what you can learn here is that one of the best sales you can do is actually, if you don't have a sales hat on, or if it doesn't say sales on your business card, but it says engineer. And the only thing you need to do is basically identify problems, articulate why they are a problem, and proactively come with ideas of how you solve those problems in a good way. This is the most beautiful sale you can do. So the customer will love you, and the only difference is like you have a frame of what you're supposed to do in your consultant gig. If you in your consulting gig realizes that there are 5 different things blocking me here, that ultimately if you solve those, this will work better. But by the way, if you solve them, I can sell you 5 more consultants. So this kind of problem-solving engagement, I think, for engineers is much closer to heart of solving problems. But what they need is, back to Anders, communicate their ideas and why these are important, and maybe a hunch of proactiveness. I mean, like sometimes the engineers is focused on solving the problem they got instead of seeing the outside picture here. I mean, like
that's so common.
So there are some very simple things here: communication, identifying the problems around you out of your, and then proactively communicate and suggest.
Communication in a context, because you can communicate, but the aim of game is that you need to, as a consulting engineer, to sell your company, and so.
That's sold in a good way, right?
Yeah, so that's and when I ask God, I'm going to say, of course, we can help them.
But this is not sales necessarily. I mean,
But it's not a sales. So we are
should
over.
use that word.
Yeah, I don't think it's the right word, because so the idea was here. So, and I have a outsourcing company, right? So you have like let's say that I now have found 5 great candidates that I know that are awesome for this client. So I'm presenting those 5, and he's having an interview with them. They're technicians. None of them is getting selected. Why? Because they have lack of rhetorics, lack of communication, lack of selling themselves.
Relationship,
socializing, and all of this other intelligence that you have around it. So I don't think that it's negative to give technical people more, education into those fields. So when Dacil came and approached like, hey, do you think this is possible? I think it's, of course it's possible. We create like a training of 2-3 days, and that's it. I mean, people are not media trained. You go to school for that. Your communication team will come to you and say like, okay, now you're going to be media trained, and we're going to tell you what you need to say, how you need to say it, what do you need to wear, how you're going to look.
Same thing.
That is basically mastering. So in a consultancy business, especially like in this example and etc., it's crucial that you have engineers and technical people that are aware of this art.
Yes.
Because they are the face, they are the seller. Although they don't need to sell, they are still selling with the way how they look, the way how they talk, the way how they approach the client and everything
I've done
else.
this consulting training program. Back in the days, and this is an anecdote, we work with Berens and Textile Service. So they sell different things of textile, how you can rent clothes for factories, different things. And they basically wanted to have a more sales-oriented customer service. So we built a ladder. This is people sitting in customer service, where we basically focus on, okay, step 1, maturity level 1, be much better at effectively communicating and solving reactively what comes through the door. And then we made like an axis, like how do you take the level of proactivity? So we were teaching them in proactivity. And in this sense, like, okay, what's the next level of proactivity to think outside the box, how you can give them more value? And then the ultimate game, what we taught them was like, actually, when you see they are doing something, I realize now that you have called me 3 times on the same problem. Actually, I see that you probably have the wrong type of contract with us. This problem that occurs now because of this is basically you should probably be on this contract. It's a little bit,
But I think
so this can be taught.
And I think a lot of people that maybe hearing this podcast are engineers, and they think how I can do it, because I think it's not me only seeing this. Or when I ask you, can we do it? I think the question is how we change this. School is difficult. I guess that's far away when you can do that.
You should try still, but it's difficult. For sure.
But how we can, because I'm still taking this fight. I will actually do it internally with us. But I guess it's a lot of other companies that people that hear our podcast and I'm there. I cannot do sales myself. So this
awesome topic. And if we had any chance of covering some of the topics we were planning to, I think we should move to at least one more.
Yes, at least. Awesome.
Okay, so from that to something completely different then perhaps. But you have a lot of experience with working with large corporations and enterprises. And there is a lot of enterprises that of course want to go on the digitalization journey and become more data ready and AI ready potentially. If we start the question like, what would you say that the biggest challenges are for a company that is not, digital native? They are more of an analog company, but they want to start a journey. What are the main challenges, you would say?
I think I know this is fact. Everybody's saying the same. It sounds really boring, but the strategy, of course, that have to be aligned with the strategy of the company. You cannot have a data strategy that go a totally different way. And with the strategy, I mean a clear vision of what is that, why we need to do that jump. Maybe we're fine where we are, but when C-level people are thinking that we need to digitalize or we need to be data-driven, it's coming from some place. And you need to break it down in, again, things that you can actually change. You cannot change everything. So how do you start?
How do you start?
So say, okay, for example, the topic about data. Every company has data someplace. And I actually got the question from somebody in London. He said to me, what is the most important thing in AI? And like, data governance. Sounds super boring, but actually it's true. You need to have the data control and know what you have to be able to do whatever you need to do. But if we have little data, but that's better doing now when you have a lot of data than doing later, because later is too late. And for me, it's kind of start with who cares about the data? Who is the data owner? Just finding data owners in a company that doesn't have them? Who cares? You have to have business caring about this. Because otherwise become a point where say, like, no, but IT owns the data. Have you heard that before? And they don't own the data. So why you want to do the jump, and if you're going to start the data, of course, because everything starts there, is making realistic steps. And don't think that you will solve this in 6 months because you're going to buy tool X and Y.
The tool will not solve.
It will not solve the problem.
Or just start with a thesis student, that do that in 6 months. They will have a project, and then we'll know if this works or not. And if that's the only investment you make, then it will work, right?
be really, honest with yourself. If you start a journey, if you need to start that journey, you need to think that it will take you 5 years maybe or more, and have that, because often gets like. I always make a joke. It's like when you want to wash your legs when it's summer and you have a little bit of hair and you're like, oh, I need to do some work. And then it's really painful. So you're like, I don't want to do it. It's painful to do a big change.
But it goes back to what you said first with you cannot go on a digitalization and data AI journey just because you heard it in Davos or you thought it's cool. So you need to internalize what is my business problem that becomes a data AI problem. What is the concrete things that we really need to be good at? What is it that we need to master that we're not mastering? And if maybe you can sense that this is, I should probably digitize, but you cannot still build a project. You cannot get the change stamina based on that loose ground. So then your first step is really internalize on a very, very concrete problem.
Yep.
Can I articulate my data AI challenge or purpose in relation to my business problem? And if I can't do that, I don't have any foundational ground to build a proper investment.
And today, with things that you don't need to, the investment is not that high like before. You need to buy servers or buy a tool for a year. Today, you can actually start that journey. Yeah. And doesn't have to cost the whole IT budget.
You can experiment on a very small and then scale stepwise.
Exactly, because the tools today are actually allowing you to do this. You don't have to do a massive investment to do that.
I guess you're referring to cloud technology, and if you start to make use of them properly and the right tools, then you can get started very quickly.
Yes.
But then I guess one or two different ways to get started then, if I were to challenge a bit here. One is to start small, another is to start big. And then what I mean with that is then, for one, I think everyone that thinks it's a small investment, it will happen in 6 months, I think we all agree that is a bad idea. It will never work. But then, okay, let's say that someone realized, as you said, I think you said it very aptly, that it probably is a 5-year journey or more. And I completely agree. But then you want to get started. And then you can either say, okay, let's build up an infrastructure for 3 years. And then after 4 years, let's start to find a product. And then after 4.5 years, perhaps we have the first value coming out to the business. Or you try to find, I'm asking a very leading question. I'm sorry, I couldn't phrase it better.
It's not a question, by the way.
Yeah, I know. But you see my point,
Yeah.
But you mentioned starting with data governance, and I guess a question could be, should you start small or bigger in some way, or should you start working, building the full infrastructure, or should you start with a small product, or how should you get started?
Again, because changing how people, the way they work, is the most difficult part.
Should you start with that?
In my head, yes. You can start some things in parallel. You don't have to, wait until everybody's super happy about the change. But if you're going to become data driven and you're going to go from my gut feeling, or I always have done this in this way, why I have to digitalize anything, you have to start really early telling the story so people believe it. Because it doesn't matter if you spend a lot of money and you all do your infrastructure and technique if the people will not still use it. Organizations are really good in bypassing whatever you do. Mm-hmm. So this is also something that you need to be careful that if you don't have everybody with you, I'm working in an industry that was fully old-fashioned. It was paper all over the place and batch. And every time I talk about some digitalization, or it's like, why we need to do that? Why we need to scan our documents and make it? I have somebody that scan this manually.
If I understand you correctly, for one is to build the understanding of the potential of being increasingly data-driven. If people don't buy it from the management team or from the rest of the company, then they won't, do the investment necessary. So that's potentially the first step to build the understanding, right? Trust and understanding, yes. But then after that, what do you do? Because I think there is some people that do a mistake potentially in saying we need to centralize all the data, we have to have centralized pipelines for all the data in the company, and then once we have the data in order, we start to build a product. And I think that potentially is a mistake.
Yeah, but I remember when I was working in Lowell, we had a discussion, we did a project that I think that went already live, where we have a decision to go cloud. Mm-hmm. So we had a huge on-prem data storage, and we want to go cloud. And the discussion go how we want to do it. Yes. And we start discussion, do we do country-based? So we take one country first, and then next country. Or we do product line. We do department B, C, and then we do that for all the countries. So what discussion do we do country based, and what we did is, okay, what is the common denominator of the data? And because we were heavily regulation by law, we saw that you cannot do the same thing in Norway and Sweden because the law will complicate things. So we decided, okay, then migrate to one country at a time. So we start with Sweden, and we migrate Sweden. And on Sweden is a lot of things, so we start with the core, the most important, where we gain more money and benefit. So we started with one country, one area that we felt that this is where we're going to get more attention and more value of the money, because that's a big investment. So you have to do something that it shows it makes sense to do this. You cannot spend 3 years doing a beautiful back end and nothing coming out because people were like, what are you doing? So it was finding, and then you choose, when you already start, I don't know if somebody's seeing my hands, but I'm moving the hands a lot.
Some people are seeing it. Okay. A lot of people are watching video as well. It's fine.
I notice I move my hands a lot. Okay, great. So when you start at some place, you learn. Yeah. And then the next time, you get a little bit wiser. And the next time, so when you do it small steps, it gets faster and faster because you have done all the mistakes and things are happening. And so that was the idea for us to do that. So choose what the piece that it creates fastest value. And it can be a department, it can be a country, it can be.
So start with something concrete and small. Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
But think big. Of course, you have to think big. At the end of the day, we're supposed to migrate everybody.
But there's a quote from Shunkamui, like an innovation expert, write book: "Think big, start small, scale fast."
Yeah.
And the problem if you don't think big is that you don't have an understanding for the direction of how you build tech. The problem if you start big is that you have a replatforming investment from hell without any use case or value coming out. So I truly believe in that. You need to understand the bigger picture, maybe as the best bet hypothesis. But then you need to start very small and focus on getting the first use case out. So in the end, we had this huge conversation, remember? Do we start centralized? Do we start decentralized? And then we realized, actually, think big for the whole picture, but that's just on paper and with minimum investment. Then the first step to start is picking your battles so you can get the use case in production as fast as possible. Yes. And then you have the first
like normal software engineering, actually.
Like normal software engineering. Yes. What is the where do we get bottom line value? And then of course you get to a point where we all understand that if we would continue on the trajectory that each use case and each domain do exactly what they want, and they need to invest in 50 different markets and build 50 different platforms, you will not have the muscle to get this done.
So it won't scale fast enough.
It won't scale fast enough.
Everyone is doing the same thing from scratch every time.
We had this huge discussion, quite fun, and then in the end we solved it by putting a piece, salt, a piece of, what do you call it? A salt container, a salt can, a pepper can, and we were sitting and doing the fundamental how to think here, and it's like it. You need to think big, but then you need to start in one domain, one use case where you can be super concrete. And it's a very simple answer of why. Because if you lift all the stones and all different data, you're screwed. Yeah. So you need to stay within bounded context. You need to stay somewhere where you can control the problem, right? One country, one domain.
And another thing, sorry, that is also that I discovered, and maybe because you could say something different to me, but one of the things that I've seen is the decommission of the old stuff. It's like people forget that I've never seen a proper decommission plan. And I've been
it is hard.
I'm one of the few who is very proud of that work, but that's a painful work.
Yeah, I know, but it's like I've seen and for me it was the same when I started. This cloud migration, and we're supposed to change tool from Click to Power BI, and I never saw. And I said to IT, "Where's the decommission plan for Click?" I said, "What do you mean? I guess we just shut down that at some point, or So interesting that why." Is that like?
It's hard. I remember the Spotify move from on-premise to cloud. It started, a long way back. It took like 5 years to just, make the cloud work properly, but they still have the on-premise clusters, available to actually shut them down.
Still there.
I think today they probably are. It was a while since I last, but it took a long time. Right.
Why is that?
No, but I this is a very, very good point, and I have two anecdotes on this, one from Vattenfall and one from Scania, and I don't think it's bad to talk about it. One topic was moving from Click to Power BI, and the way we did it was that we put 3 years ahead of time. We highlighted this is when we're going to shut this down, and we made the decommissioning strategy very, very clear as part of the change management, that now we can opportunistically go to the different parts of Vattenfall that is some wants to go fast and some wants to go late. Fine, no problem. But here it's going to be a problem for you. So this is one learning to use that clarity. Then when we did the journey that I've been in Scania, they had a couple of years before I joined, they made a very clear cloud first decision. But they hadn't made a clear decommissioning plan, and they hadn't even made a clear path to cloud plan, which meant that, we have made a strategic decision to go cloud. When was that? 2 years ago. What has happened? Nothing. and don't joke about this, because I think it's easy to strategically make a decision, but then to back it up to really, how the fuck will we do this? I have full respect for that. And then as long as you're trying to solve that problem, are we going to go to cloud for all of Scania? You can't solve it. So then I come in, I want to be the guinea pig in our unit. It's not a small unit, but so we now start, because we have a situation where we have other ERP solutions already in something in the cloud. So it makes sense for us that our data should be in the cloud as well. So here now, and then you can sort of build something small, and you can build a pattern around it, and then it goes very fast, right? So when you're trying to do it's too big, you get so many dimensions of complexity that you get paralyzed.
When I was working in Intron, we replaced SAS with open source.
Ooh, that's an interesting one.
That was a story. And we decided to make it. I said, okay, fine. We have 6 months to say to SAS that we don't want to renew the subscription. So I said, now we do it. So we have 6 months. Period.
Oh, you did that before you actually had it working?
Yeah, because I'm tired of talking. We were sitting and talking on how to do this, and my data scientists had a lot of ideas, but now we do it. So we have actually 6 months to fix it. And I actually did it.
You did it?
Yeah, because some people were better than the stress. I noticed.
No, but it's to create.
So actually, oh my God.
It's crazy, but it's actually a valid point that, sometimes we need to put the compelling event. We need to put down something that we can work against, because when you say 6 months,
if there's anything we learn, during pandemics or whatnot, is if you have your back against the wall, you will be able to fix it.
Hallelujah.
Right?
That is my point. So I don't understand why it's so much discussion about this is going to be so difficult. So if you start with this strain of thought, if we don't have any option today and we have to do it now, can we start working?
How do we do it?
Yes. And people, you will see immediately within a month or 2 or 3, this will be done.
Yeah, because
but when the politics comes in.
No, and this is so important, because it sounds crazy when someone puts down, we're going to go from SaaS to open source in 6 months. But as soon as you say that, you can work backwards. What does that really mean?
Exactly.
Because,
that's what we did.
Because if I have 6 months, then I'm going to define the change in this way. If you give me 10 years, I can define the change in a different way. But not until someone puts the foot down and says, okay, let's do what we can in 6, So if everything is moving, that's another way of putting it. If everything is moving, we coulda, woulda, shoulda, and you can argue forever. But then you say, okay, now this is fixed.
Yeah.
Let's work against that. What happens then? And then you need to scope out.
That's the most interesting part, because we have to remove all that wasn't necessary.
Exactly.
We were forced to, because on all the discussion, we have to do this. There was so many, and like you say, I remember every time I meet people or departments that say, but it's so difficult. Okay, but what we do, we sit down and cry. We need to start. It doesn't matter, if we never start, it will not get less difficult just because we don't start it.
But let's summarize some key learnings here. Think big, start small, start with a use case, go there, and then ultimately, in order to get scale, you need to work on the central shared technology. Hub. Put down some clear deadlines, clear decommissioning, clear stuff. Not because it's it will sound crazy, but it gives you something to work against in order to understand what you can scope in and scope out. If everything is moving, it's a red wine discussion. It's not the proper business. We can have red wine and we can talk forever.
I never heard it before. I love it. No, but the clear decommission deadline. If this is happening this day,
how would we do it then?
Exactly.
Not bad.
Awesome. Okay, so we have different ways to get started, and we have spoken about a number of interesting examples here, and then let's say it's successful. You made these kind of first use cases work, and you start to see, actually we can find some value from this, and you want to start scaling up. What do you do? So how do you scale up from the single or a few use cases to the tens or the hundreds of use cases? Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, that actually I have. In that case, when we replaced SaaS to open source, we figured out we forgot some things. Like I always call this factory mode. You need. It sounds boring. So the idea when we started doing our machine learning is to go in factory mode. So whatever you do have to be productive, and you can leave it because somebody else would take care of that. So it was clear for us when data science that algorithm and machine learning was done, it will be passed to the factory mode. That means we had IT operations helping us. So we, at the first time, start talking to IT operations. I remember the first time we did the algorithm, we forgot that we have to get information of the logs when the container was talking to the system. That we forgot in the beginning, and then we were like, oh, we have to do what we have. That's the search. Okay, we put it there. So the important thing is that at that point you need to go enterprise. You need to adjust to it. We are using whatever API solution they have to be able to move that data around. You need to be able to have that.
You need to build up an infrastructure, is that what you're saying?
And then make it in a way that is so it can be there. You don't need to take care of that. It shouldn't be in your data science computer. Absolutely no. It have to be.
So we're talking about building something that works fragile in production versus all the infrastructure as code or everything you need to do to relentlessly automate, relentlessly make it resilient, relentlessly make it standardized on a very granular level in order to have an industrialized approach at scale, at mass.
Yeah.
Because if we have too many manual or too many things that are sort of only one guy knows, it will never scale.
No. So that kind of factory thinking, like when you build cars, that have to be in our case, in our data science community, that didn't understand this. I remember they had really hard to get the concept of, they call it the analytical factory. And we started joking about it. I don't know if Jimmy's listened to it, but we call him the factory director. So he was close to buy him a hat. Because he was responsible, he was the factory director. And it was the idea that if we cannot reuse it again, it's meaningless because we don't have the time to. So we started, for example, a stupid thing like putting things in containers. We start containerization our algorithm. Yes. It sounds now obvious, but at that time it wasn't.
Yeah, if you go back 10 years, it is not the same.
No, I know. Place. It sounds like, so for today, making that jump, there's tools today that help you in a lot of tools. I just mentioned when we became a partner with AIAW that can help that kind of factory mode approach where you don't need to care and be sure that you have A/B testing in place, that you can run your test properly.
But let's say you go there, and I'm trying to rush the discussion here a bit.
Yeah, so scale, yeah.
Yeah, so we scaled up. Now we have a more centralized infrastructure in place. We are starting to get the tooling in place to have that working properly with the critical mass that you need, both in infrastructure and people and whatnot. But now, a problem potentially when you start to centralize things is you get disconnected from the domains that may exist in the enterprise. Would you agree?
Centralization doesn't have to be bad. When you apply, and now I'm talking about how we did that machine learning in Intrum because that's concrete for me, and I can talk openly because we did it. It means that when we run that kind of algorithm where that was in production for that particular country. In the past, the data scientist team disconnected. Didn't care it was, we done our job, it's there. Yeah. So I forced the team to be able to recheck with the domain with that area that it was still working, have, a view of communicating and actually even forced them to, I remember when you were working with me, everybody have to go to the call center, listen to incoming calls. All the engineers, any tech people, because that's where the data was started, with that call. So it's important to have that centralized team to care about what they have built and be able to understand the domain.
How do you make that work then?
It's something like happen like this. It takes time to make people care. And we always call, if they care, we care. That's something that we also do. If our customers care, we will care back. Because sometimes you do something and they don't use it or it was misused and then you've lost. So it was that kind of building that caring each other. But it's nothing that I can tell you like a magic formula how to make that happen. But we had a centralized team supporting countries, 25 countries.
And I think that's, of course, a really good idea. It's just a question how you scale further. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with the term hub and spoke and this kind of, But, the idea then is that if you just, I remember from the Spotify days, we spoke a lot about this, should a single data scientist that we hire be part of a centralized team, or should it be part of embedded into a product team somewhere, building on, search functionality or playlist creation or whatnot? And then we can argue the pros and cons with that. And you say, okay, if it works in an embedded team, they are isolated. They will not have the kind of learning and critical mass to build up, the knowledge necessary for data scientists to work properly. But they will be really connected to the use case, to the domain, to the specific product value that they have for search or whatnot. So that's good, but also bad. Yeah. If you just have centralized and a centralized team of data scientists, they don't understand really the everyday working of search or playlist creation or metadata management or whatnot. So there are pros and cons with both.
I like the federation approach. When you have a kind of centralized community where you bring the people, so they're isolated, but they are part of the domains.
But here now we come to the next level. Christopher Ågren highlighted a fairly sophisticated view on this from Telia Division X. I'm a big fan of book team topologies that I would recommend people to look and study, which is how to organize software intensive business. And if I used to regurgitate, try to team topologies, they are sort of referring to 4 major categories of teams, right? Yeah. So this is when you get fairly mature, right? So you have everybody. The problem when we scale up is that you have ultimately a cognitive team load, a cognitive load to care about. So when it becomes too big, you can't do it. So if you're in a central team and you have the full cognitive load of the infrastructure, and then you're supposed to know all the different domains, it doesn't fly. So how can we structure it so teams has a mastery, autonomy, and purpose in it, so they can work with speed and make this work. And then in team topologies, they highlight streamlined teams, which is essentially then the domain has a domain problem, which is a cross-functional team. And here is now the data scientist or data engineers or software engineer, UX guys embedded, and they have a joint purpose around the domain problem, the use case, right? And then as you move, if you move back into the platform, you realize that, in order for this to work, we need to work on the mastery in different technology disciplines, and we need to build infrastructure. So here we have a platform team that their job is to build the practices and the technology where their purpose is to serve their role in the domain teams. So if it's MLOps or, if it's data, you then highlight. You don't need to invent data engineering skills. We build infrastructure for this, and we teach you. And then you have you have the streamlined teams and you have the platform teams. Then you create a third form of teams, which is the enablement team. The enablement team is basically the platform guys helping the domain teams to use and master the latest techniques, sort of thing. So 3 different styles of purposes. And then the 4th style of purpose is what they call a complex subsystem. So, an ERP system to the left or an old fucking legacy system, someone needs to know COBOL. So we have a COBOL team that deals with that. And I find that kind of understanding of how we have the fundamental objective of managing cognitive load and trying to minimize the different interfaces and who we work with. Do you see what I mean?
One thing I love that I always try to implement in the organizations I work is something called initiative-driven organization. I don't like to have back to the boxes, because if you say you only can do this, you're a data scientist, you know the domain. So what we created, and again, to help the organization to visualize this, we created something called initiative-driven organization. So it was me, and then I have all the skills in a list, all the people they had, a lot of the photos of everybody there. But when you ask us to help you, we will see who you get. It's going to be Kali all the time. So the whole organization, we remove, it was a data engineer, data scientist, you don't need to care about it. So for us, the organization reshape depending on what initiative we were working on.
Are you speaking about innovation now? Because don't jump the gun there. We have a topic here.
No, but this is how my organization, instead of doing centralized. So when we decentralize, we centralized the team, but we created in a way that it was changing depending on what we were doing. So that's what we call it, initiative-driven organization. So that's the way we could scale, to be able to move people around and allow them to...
So you have an agile way of organizing the people then, basically. So based on the initiatives you do have, you quickly, in a flexible way, move around.
Yeah, that's what I did. And it worked really good. And people were happy.
And I, to challenge that should work. It really also depends if you're in innovation and they're developing a new initiative pops up, or when you get to a stable state, or if you have a lot of core products to, some of these initiatives. So some of these initiatives becomes very stable in the end, I would assume, because there is ultimately an operations of a product or a service that goes on.
I never saw it, but I guess.
because the initiative that makes sense to me in a certain stage. But when something is in large scale production and needs operations and continuous improvement, it's a different flavor. I mean, like I can imagine how Spotify, how this model has changed many, many times because the animal changed during the journey.
Yeah, of course. And again, you need to have, at some point when our factory was up and running, a lot of the tasks were done by the ops teams. Yeah. So it wasn't nothing that the data scientist team and the engineer were taking care. So it became clear what it was. We made it happen, and we had an amazing team making it work, taking care of the factory.
I think that's a really interesting idea, and I think a lot of people should understand the ability to quickly adapt to the skills that you need as either like the maturity of a certain product evolves. Because in the beginning, you will have certain requirements and skills. As you start to develop it, it will change.
Yeah.
And to adapt with that is an important thing, right? Yeah. But just to finish off the last topic, and we spoke a bit about, what are the main challenges and how also to scale potentially the more, data-driven transformation in large organizations. And we said basically, okay, start small. Then start to build up some hub, some kind of centralized structure that do have both the infrastructure and the people skills with critical mass.
Yes.
But just to finish that off, I think potentially what you said also is that, and what you said about streamlined teams is that when you have a hub, you can start create these streamlined teams, right? But I think the danger in a lot of companies make that mistakes is you move too quickly to these kind of teams that doesn't have a hub to rely on. Exactly. Or they just do a lot of spokes or a lot of streamlined teams without having a centralized team, and then everyone is recreating everything, they're not reusing anything and building on some kind of standardized structure.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
Yeah, because they don't know what's going on.
Yes.
And again, back to the communication. There's something also that when you go inside the consulting in a company, and this happened before, you talk with the one stakeholder. We have some engineers working in one department. And then I start conversation with another department. It's like, wait a minute. I have people doing exactly the same in this department. What do you mean? You should talk to each other.
You know what? There are a number in Sweden, we have a number of AI initiatives to simply help companies try to get started with AI. And we have that in public sector and in private sector as well. And it's surprising when you speak to these companies how everyone is doing the same thing. Everyone is creating the same thing from scratch. Yeah. And if we simply collaborated not only within organization but also between, imagine the
muscle is there, but it's a little bit like we cannot pull the muscle into in something that builds muscle. We are using our energy, but
this interest. I was in the Mobile World Congress in Barcelona in February, and I don't know if you've been there.
I heard about this.
Barcelona, I love.
But this mobile phone congress in Barcelona has been there for 15, 20 years. And it's the most crazy, most important event for the telco industry.
Yeah, and not only telco. That was I was so impressed about how much data and AI was going on everywhere. Anyway, they have a big, one of the halls is, they call it 4 years from now, where all the new startup, they have 350 startup companies with a small booth in line like this, like huge. And you start working there and from different countries. It was like all over the place. And I'm like, that one we have in Sweden that I heard before. So it's so interesting when you go to any country where, and the good thing is that I guess they learn a lot from each other. Half of them will disappear, I'm pretty sure. But it was so interesting to see how many ideas that I thought it was to do a startup. If you just look around a little bit more, you will see that it was happening. Right? But it was incredible. If you have the opportunity, go there. It's not only telco.
And speaking about startups, perhaps we could move to another topic, and that would basically be, we spoke a bit about innovation before, and startups of course are great in creating innovation or inventions, depending on what you want, or perhaps not diffusion that much, but at least you can if you scale up properly.
The unicorn is a diffusion story.
Yes, right. Well said. But okay, if we let's keep to enterprises for now. And then the question would basically be, how do we keep enterprises innovative? And then, given all these startups that you saw at the Mobile World Congress conference in Barcelona, how can an enterprise keep competitive and keep an innovative in a good way? Should innovation, for example, be a separate unit that is doing that? Should innovation be part of the normal streamlined teams or the centralized teams? How should they, keep being innovative, you would say?
Again, some companies choose to actually, you have an example like Volvo. The innovation happen in somebody else, your backyard or whatever you call it. I can have my own opinion, but again, for me, if the core of you need to start with making sure that your basis is there, that you have, you know what you build, you know what your clients want, and that kind of innovation should happen within the company itself. And I think, and there's nobody's isolated. Innovation is happening everywhere, and you just need to be. I remember when I was working in the finance industry, I always went to events about IoT or telecom because I want to know what everybody else was doing. That if I go to another bank conference, I will listen to the same people doing the same thing and talking about the same thing. So for me, it was important to find inspiration, innovation in other industries that doing things that I can apply back to my own industry. So for me, innovation should be owned by like a fostering mentality or culture within the organization itself, and not have somebody owning that or limited it or.
So how should a larger organization then, like an enterprise, have that in itself? I mean, you can think of different ways. I mean, you can build up a separate like R&D department. You can have innovation units. You can have innovation as part of normal engineering teams.
You have to have it in a department because that's where money comes in. At the end of the day, there's a budget connected to that.
You have to have R&D what's that?
You have an R&D department. You can get that money you have to be, and that's how large corporations, you have that kind of money that you give to innovation or an R&D department because it makes sense in the books.
But
so I guess again I don't know exactly.
Can we use Schumpeter? Can we use this as a theoretical game here? Because if we differentiate between the objective of invention, the objective of innovation, and the objective of diffusion, and now we need to define it carefully. So invention is coming up with a new technology or ideas or the innovative invention that maybe changes something. That's the objective of invention. the objective of innovation is to find the economical requirements of making that actually work, which actually means I need to not only do the technology, but I need to understand the operating model and productize it in such a way so it makes economical benefit both for the user and for me. So if you use Schumpeter's definition of innovation versus invention, an R&D department is doing invention. Then when you're trying to do, I'll take the example, an R&D in Scania invents an electric, whatever, okay? That's one thing to do the invention of a prototype of an actual autonomous truck. But in order to innovate with that, it implies building the operating model around that and be able to build a meta product so you can sell autonomous trucks and you can put the price on it and you can service it. And diffusion means going from 200 autonomous trucks to, all the trucks in the world.
Should be.
So under the umbrella of a loosely termed discussion of innovation, I have now separated invention, innovation, and diffusion. In my opinion, then, if I use this strict term innovation as Schumpeter is defining it, it can never be R&D. Innovation is actually finding the economical, the fundamental operating model. It's the core business, right? So something that is a prototype or a POC, that's invention. The prototype graveyard is invention that never made it to innovation. So everything that is in the prototype graveyard is inventions that never made it into a viable innovation. If I use that terminology,
it could potentially, right?
No. For some reason, they didn't figure out the product market fit, or they didn't find.
Invention always bad? You say?
No. Invention.
Because some inventions do make it to innovation,
so
right?
Innovation is the starting point.
You said innovation, but you mean invention, right?
Invention is the starting point.
Yes,
and then this is a great invention, but it's this Shindugu invention, a crazy, idiotic thing that you cannot sell or you cannot make use of.
So innovation should happen in the streamlined teams or in the normal product teams or streamlined teams and so on, right?
If I follow this definition from Schumpeter, who defines this model, then I would argue
should
this.
Invention happen then, potentially? Or what do you think? I have my own idea, but I'm waiting for you.
No, but I like the way you make it.
It's not me making this.
No, but I mean,
I'm trying to
but
follow a model here to make sense of this, because this is hard.
It's super hard, and often in companies where you have that, when you want to that jump where you have that a lot of, like you said, some innovation doesn't bring value anyway. You said really good ideas, but that doesn't make sense. And you don't want to kill that because of maybe 100 ideas, one will happen and will bring that. So I don't know.
Let me give a short
hard
question.
questions.
I think I have my own idea about this, and it's a hybrid approach, as everything should be. It's a balance between things. I think, of course, innovation should happen in the streamlined teams. It basically means that if you have some team, they usually have some product that they're working with. Let's take an example, the search functionality of Spotify or whatnot. Now, they should be continuously innovating and trying out different things in a failing fast kind of mode to make sure that their product as it is today continues to improve. That should be a normal thing of the way they work. That said, how do you find innovations.
Innovations.
How do you find innovation that is not connected to the product they connected to? So if a team is connected to a certain product, can they really make innovations that is not connected to the product? I think not.
Mm-hmm.
So
you think that way. Yeah.
Then it needs to be something else that complements the innovations happening connected to a product. That is basically the R&D department then, that is disconnected from product development. And I think it actually needs to be disconnected. And it will also do a lot of inventions that will fail.
Yes,
of course.
And it needs to be that way. Otherwise, you won't find the 1 of the 10 of the inventions that do work, that is not connected to the existing products that you have. Some people even say, it's a researcher in Uppsala University in innovation that basically says all innovation happens outside of the mainstream use cases. I don't really agree perfectly
but
with this.
This one, are we talking about improvement or disruptive innovations that drastically changes the game?
I guess more disruptive then. Yeah. But I can a bit see his point. If you keep to the product and only innovate that means you will have a faster horse, a la Henry Ford, all the time, right? So you need at some point find the disruptive ones. That one that really change, and get you out of the Kodak moment and staying with the analog cameras all the time. And that, I think, is why you need a hybrid approach, both a separate R&D department and innovation R&D happening inside the existing teams.
But that's why it's useful to separate the definition of invention versus innovation, because that means what I'm trying to get here is that
inventions can happen in the Streamline team as well.
Yeah,
and they should. It should be a lot of failed inventions.
Yeah, there can be inventions in streamlined teams, but what you are highlighting also with the extreme disruptive inventions, you don't know it's an innovation. No. Because now if you do another interesting, we take another model and put next to it. So if you can imagine now you have Schumpeter's 3 phases: invention, innovation, diffusion, and then you put the traditional technology adoption curve, the bell curve that then with George Moore, they cross the chasm, right? And we have innovators, early adopters, and then we have the chasm into early majority, late majority, laggards. That's so if you can imagine now, something that has made it to the innovators is literally something that is invention phase with experimenting customers as innovators, and they are trying to iterate to get to a product market fit. And if I use this analogy now, where is Schumpeter's innovation? When does something go from innovation to invention to innovation to diffusion? I think if you lay them next to each other, as long as you are in with early innovators, you are literally in co-creation space trying to see if an invention flies. And then you get to early adopters. You're moving into this is kind of, we can build a business model on this. Diffusion is really crossing the chasm to not until you really understood something, you have diffusion, you have something that can really scale up. Which I think is now really interesting to understand that we need both.
Yes. And it's a little bit like we did a project with the client, not far away, and we supposed to. They need to have check whether every time they have delivery of stuff on the warehouse, it took time to take into the shelves, and they didn't understand why. So we created an IoT thingy that make that. But what happened is we realized that due to we did that data coming in, we saw different things happening in the factory floor, and it created new ideas that allow us to, and that's because this client was open for that. Wait, we did this for this purpose. Out of the blue, we get something totally different, and we okay with that, and we can actually have that kind of mindset that it's okay that maybe we fail in what the original idea was, but wait a minute, it was something else much better. And if you don't have companies that give you that, that margin of error to be able to. Because again, at the end of the day, it's about money that you have to invest in something that you don't know if you're going to get a value. But there's no lot of money in the world. So having a healthy mindset of how innovation will happen and when will it happen, just because you decided that will happen tomorrow, maybe we'll not do it. And I think a lot of companies are afraid of, teams are afraid to be innovative because they don't know if they can. Where's the ROI? Where's my return on invest? So as long as a lot of pressure on getting money out of whatever innovations you have, it will make people afraid to think outside the box.
But this is really important also to answer the question if we need an R&D team and all that. This is going on this topic because in order to have innovation, you need to have experimentation. Okay, if you are running an operations, a product team, which is super efficient and now super lean, so there is really no slack. There is no redundancy in order to do real innovation. then you have a problem, right? And traditionally in large organization, we have identified this problem, and then we have instigated an R&D team. So it also means that if you think you're going to run disruptive innovation in the core business, it means a shitload of slack or redundancy for them to do that, and most people don't have that. So
I think you can. I mean, if you heard about the Amazon kind of innovation approach that they have, they really want to have innovation happening throughout the company, not in a centralized way. I think you need to have both. They do have both centralized research team as well, so it's wrong to say
they have
that
big bets where they go nuts on the side.
and they went nuts and failed so many times.
And they try to compete with Elon on rockets and everything.
On rockets and the Fire phone, if you remember that.
But again, that's the culture that fostered that.
Come on, the drone is not their core bit, you know.
Any case, but they have an approach where they really want to promote innovation happening everywhere, and they have the idea that every co-worker or worker should be able to say, I have this idea. Okay, then the manager say, write a press release. And they basically say, okay, imagine that your invention now will succeed. How would the press release look like once it's being an innovation or being released or deployed? And then you start with that and you write it like, this is the value it will have. This is the increased, disruption and the value for the customers and blah, blah, blah. And you write it as a press release. And then you have to sell it. And then if you are able to sell it, you get time to work on it. And I think it's a rather nice way to incentivize people to do that throughout the teams, in also streamlined teams.
Yeah, but they have to be. One of the things I remember a few years back when it was all this, these competitions of people, companies were paying money to have ideas to. Anyway, Intron had this. Innovation days where people supposed to hackathon. Thank you. Remember hackathon? That was the days. And so sad that the winning idea of the hackathon never went in production.
Yes,
of course, never.
And I said to the hackathon manager, why are we doing this year after year? This is so frustrated. Why? They kill innovation. People will not go the hackathon because it never go in production. So don't choose the one is more fancy, have the best presentation. Use the one that actually can make in production. But I mean, oh my God, it was like.
Don't get me started on hackathons.
I'm also biting my tongue here.
You remember the first one that we had when Corona came in? And then there was like a national one, and there was like thousands of people there.
I've been a judge on one of these hackathons. I've been a judge in one of these hackathons, one of the big ones we have in Sweden, and it's fantastic. So don't take me wrong, but it's the difference between inventions or innovation theater. There's articles written, all right, we do this, but they have no chance of making it into production. So this is also a tricky one when you have R&D to the side. And you have done a great invention, but the leap to get it into innovation or understanding how to operate it's huge, right? Anyway.
The time is flying away here. And
I saw that as well.
And
It's away for a long time.
I know. So trying to come to some closing topics, and we usually try to end a bit more with philosophical topics.
Wait, I want to put a middle bridge before you end.
I had some philosophy. Okay, but continue.
Just watch this. Okay, so let's see if we can put this on. Do you know what is this, right? Have you seen this?
I have not seen this.
Harry Potter.
My name is Harry Potter.
Is it the first ChatGPT?
Yes. So, Tom Riddle is ChatGPT. That is the point of the entire thing.
Oh, but awesome. That's a perfect bridge to my next
So I was explaining to my daughter, so like, let me tell you about this ChatGPT. So like, okay. So basically, this is like when Harry is asking, like, writing things in a Tom Riddler's diary, and he's answering back, so like, exactly what it is.
Oh my God.
A black book.
Black book instead of a black box. I like it. Okay, but continuing on generative AI and of course ChatGPT and all the explosion that happened, in large language models and whatnot these recent months at least. But although from a research point of view, of course, it's been going on for many years. And I in my view at least, the generative AI is basically not replacing the old type of AI methods. You have deep learning still, you have traditional machine learning with structured data, you still have rule-based approaches that you can do, but it adds up new use cases, new abilities to use AI that wasn't possible before. What do you think, if we want to have a company that say, because I literally get this question quite often, we have to start using generative AI. This is awesome. How do we get started using it? And I get really annoyed when I get that question, by the way. But it is a good question.
Are you getting it?
Yes, sure. And then the question is really, how do you approach this? For one, it's a bit annoying when you have a media hype like this, and people think, this is a solution for everything.
But it's not new.
It is not new. Right?
Remember when the chatbots or the robots, you remember when Blue Prism and all these RPAs came?
Yes. Or the old office assistant or whatnot. In the 90s.
Yes,
or Eliza in the 1960s.
We don't learn. And what is happening with the generative AI is the same that happened with RPAs. And I remember that, that topic that when you have a hammer or your problem is a pike, it's the same. It's that we don't learn. And
so we have a different problem, my dear friend. This is not a generative AI problem, please.
Yeah,
that's the bottom line, right?
So I think what we need to, when you have a technology that is so sexy that you need to have it, then you find a place to put it.
Yes.
That's for sure. I'm pretty sure that you will find a nice user case or blockchain for my matter.
Yes.
Okay, maybe we don't talk about blockchain, but it's the same thing.
Don't open that rabbit hole now.
Sorry, I saw your eyes when I saw.
You guys are on the same page on that one.
Okay.
So it's the same. So in my opinion, when a client, and because when like with Nagarro, we say, you can solve this something with us. I don't know how many blockchains things will come to us like you can do this with something else. So generative AI, by all means, if you think you have to have it and you think it's worth the money, you can put it anywhere. Does it make sense? No. Maybe how long it took until RPA? A few years, 2 years?
But RPA is still there. It's still there.
Yeah, but it's not solving every humankind's problems like it was solved.
It didn't meet up to the expectations.
If you go to the right conference, it still does it. But for the rest of us, it has moved on.
Oh. So at some point it will happen. Now we have the hype, and we have.
But I think this is different. I think there is huge value here, but I think the problem is with the hype that we don't understand what use cases are for generative AI and not. And then I think there's a huge infrastructure gap to use generative AI in commercial production for a B2B company. Yes. It's one thing that we sit and I can have predictive use case as an individual now, writing my emails, but doing something commercially, robust, resilient.
And all the regulations and oh my God, it's...
So people understand the gap. There's a middleware gap here.
What do you think?
Sorry.
Some user cases is amazing. We had a discussion with a colleague of mine about when, for me, NLP at that point was the area where we help a lot. I've seen this for a long time, even before it was where a lot of text is handling, and you need to make sense of all that kind of static information. But say, for example, you have in a lot of documentation that is still in paper in an industry, an old-fashioned industry. And the head of mechanics knows how to solve any problem because they have a book with some cafes things on, and so imagine that you can take all that text, not the internet text. So you scan all this information and make it assistant to learn. So next time you don't need to ask Kale because you can ask, how do I fix problem X specific? And you have all that knowledge in paper that you can actually create an internal ChatGPT for your mechanical engineer in the floor. So there's
value.
That's value is not internet data. It's really you optimize that process that can, because the person using it, the mechanic, maybe it's not. You need to speak to that mechanic like a human being. You have to explain it like it was Kale explaining to him how to fix that particular problem.
No, but if you dissect that problem now, okay, the large language models and everything like that will make your service more linguistically fluent, so you can speak normally to it, and some guy who's not a computer literate can just talk to it and get the answer. But in reality, what you're highlighting now, we need to do the second part of this engineering, which is taking all the different text, which is our text, has nothing to do with the large language models, and we now need to contextualize what we're doing in relation to that. So here now is like, what is really the language model, that makes us linguistically fluent, and what is the underlying use case or problem of the engineering service handbook.
But without the language model, you never have sense to digitalize all the data, all that information, because it didn't make sense. You would not be able to respond in the way that you need it.
No. So what you're saying is, before we had the understood what we could do with generative AI, used to digitize all that old data, wouldn't have given us any way of searching it or discussing it or relating to it. But by putting them together, we have something interesting going.
Exactly.
Okay, I get it.
You of course you can have digitized that data ages ago, but it didn't make sense because it was not able to.
We couldn't really do anything useful with it.
And the end users of that information are not people that know how to search or they know how to. So it often in my head, the searchability of data is the issue in a lot of companies. When you just look at your Confluence pages where you have a lot of data, if you don't spell it right, forget it. We still have a lot of issues where it's difficult to ask. I don't know how to ask a question, or I don't know how to Google properly to get what I get. We still have. You need to be almost an expert to how to ask something to get a response. But the new technology allow anybody to ask a question and get a good answer back. So you don't need to be an expert in. You remember the first time we were chatting? You have to have all the commands, and I remember now, but it was like you have to have things to be able to get the search. And now for me that kind of able to process data makes other end users that they didn't have it before. People from I don't know, data driven. I don't know if it makes sense to. But I like it. I think
it will create, I guess, a lot of new use cases, and especially perhaps users that are not as technical. I mean, it does provide like a natural language interface and a dialogue interface that is very easy to use. And,
but that's coming with you said the low code, new code hype that we have. But again,
you want to open all these kind of rabbit holes.
Yeah, sorry, you didn't tell me all the. Don't mention the word.
Don't mention the word. There's a couple of words.
You didn't tell me that. I didn't get the memo.
I forgot to say that.
No, but I mean that society wants to simplify.
Yes,
that's the way we are.
I guess in short, at least it will cause a lot of new opportunities and
a lot of waste of money.
It will. Yes, I think that's one of the very well said, Dacil. I think it will cause a lot of waste of money, and a lot of companies will invest a lot of in infrastructure or data storage and whatnot that will not really lead to a true value. At least not in short term, as it otherwise could if they chose the right tool for the job, so to speak. Yes. Right.
But don't kill the joy.
It is. It is a joy, but for some, it will create value.
And in the end, we will have someone said when it comes to generative AI, you need to understand we are at the Napster moment in time of internet with this technology. So when we could sense that this is going to change the way we buy or stuff, if you remember Napster, internet didn't really exist. We didn't really know what to use it for. And all of a sudden it was this, pirates page where you could get free streaming music.
I know.
This had value, right? And it gave us a view of what e-commerce and everything could be. And in some ways, okay, now we have Kurzweil's law and an exponential speed, so it's not going to take 15 years. But if we all remember where internet was in 95, this is the moment in time we're at right now. We are, for generative AI, where internet was in 95. That is my sort of view on this. It hasn't started.
I believe if it makes sense. Or everything that pop-ups here and there, I do love it. I think make my life so much easier. And I'm super lazy, so it helps me a lot.
But I think also it's good. I mean, for me, it made me a bit frustrated to begin with because, at least as a researcher, I mean, we can see the underlying technology and inventions that are succeeding did exist for a long while back, but they had the innovation happening now very recently where they really made mainstream.
I like this rhetoric. It works. Yes. It actually works.
You influenced me. I mean, it's you teaching us here, Henrik.
It works.
It's useful to have these terms, right?
It's useful. I realize it works.
and that's cool by itself. But also it's a bit frustrating that people confuse what you can use this type of generative AI for and when they should use other types of AI. But I think it's also good because people open up their mind that, oh shit, AI is more powerful than people think.
But this is maybe the bigger gain now. Yeah. The coin has dropped. And when the coin drops, we can never steer change. It's like, I sometimes say, change is like pouring milk into coffee. You cannot do an as-is to be gap analysis and think you can steer change. You have black coffee in one hand and you have milk in the other hand, and then you start pouring, and in the end you get a latte, right?
Yeah.
But you cannot predict how the exact mixing of the milk in the coffee will happen. And I think that's what happened now. We got to the tipping point. This is the tipping point. When ChatGPT takes this mainstream, all of a sudden, okay, now we have started to pour milk. Let's fucking see what happens. But
I think the only thing that is, if it's something annoying, is how people think there's some kind of super magic power behind this. I get a question, but this new ChatGPT think by itself. Like, no, it doesn't. Yeah, because I asked a question, I never asked it before. I'm like, okay. You think so? Okay, fine. It thinks by himself. Yeah. So I think the issue now that when you have that massive use of people,
they get the wrong view of it.
And this is like,
I know.
Okay.
But still, it was a big step, though, with generative AI in general. Perhaps ChatGPT, brought the innovation into place, but still the generative AI has been around for a time. But still it opened up, I think, in a rather impressive way, new ways to build AI systems. And perhaps at one point it showed us that it will potentially reach a point of AGI, some kind of general AI that will be more...
When will that happen?
Yes. Are you afraid of it?
No. Oh my God, no. I love every time I have I present about AI, I have that picture with the two... I have Terminator and CSPO and ask the audience which path you think we will go.
You got Terminator and what?
C3PO.
Oh, the Star Wars thing.
Yeah. So I've always used, and the other day I have the same talk in my company, but I use awesome. I use a what is the name? It's a TV series called Alternate Carbon with an AI that is a hotel. Alternate Carbon. Okay, they can download the memory into a chip, so you can change body.
Is this like a TV series?
Oh my God, Netflix.
Which one?
Alternate Carbon.
Yeah, you can find it.
What is it called?
Alternate carbon.
Alternate carbon. A carbon is your body, and it has
it's like Neuralink for
What is this? I have Netflix.
Yeah, it's the main actor is
the Swedish guy that is so handsome. Oh my God.
Yeah.
But anyway, so in that movie, there's an AI, there's a hotel. So I put a picture of that AI, and I put Ultron from Marvel as a bad guy. And I asked the audience, which path do you want to go? And people were like, what? I'm like, okay, let's go vintage. And then I changed to Terminator and to CTPO.
The old school, they worked with better.
So for me, technology will help here. I believe that it will make our life much easier.
Yeah, Joe Kinnaman.
Okay.
You have to see this series. It's about the
Joel
ultimate.
Kinnaman, okay, that's.
It's about how human being can download the memories into a chip and change bodies and your
Do you
consent.
think Neuralink will happen then?
Yeah, of course. And teletransportation. I really want to energize.
Yes.
I'm waiting for that.
The Star Trek thing. Yes.
I actually literally waiting for that to happen.
Did you see, by the way, today there was a big event for Elon Musk, we haven't mentioned his name once.
Oh, now you did.
I know.
You
But-
almost made the whole,
I know.
but you couldn't do it.
There was a super big thing today. Does anyone know what
I
I'm referring
missed it.
to?
I missed it.
It's one of the biggest, or really big. No, it was a test launch of Starship. So SpaceX thing. So the super, super big 120 meters tall
big one.
rocket. Yeah, the one that should bring us to Mars.
The one that took in the news yesterday about we're going to have a Swedish astronaut.
No,
Astronaut?
not
No,
the
no.
same.
Okay.
But it was, they've been planning for this for a long time. They were planning to do it on Monday. Now they did it today, right before we had this podcast.
Why you didn't invite me?
It was, without any humans in it, I can tell you. So it's completely automated. But it went up and it actually lifted off. And it went up to 38 kilometers and then it blew up. Nice kaboom.
On purpose.
Not on purpose, no.
That's a lot of money.
but it was surprisingly successful anyway, that they made it lift off. That was a big success. And then it didn't, it's supposed to land again, but that failed. But still, that they, that's one. Oh, they turned it negative, but it actually, it was a really,
So please explain what was positive.
it's fireworks,
This is Anders explaining his success.
Yeah, but
This is what Vasa.
success.
So
What do
the
you mean?
king Vasa, like in the 1500s, putting the ship into the sea and then it sails for 300 meters and then it sinks. Is like, you see, it was successful.
We will have a museum about this and
But this is a really, it is a success.
This is the boss.
No, but,
No, but it is a success. It's a super big thing. It's the biggest rocket ever built.
But it didn't fly. What do you mean? It just lifted 300. They could have thrown it from a
38
crane.
kilometers. It was a really, really far. It almost made it into orbit.
almost.
My friend.
It's product development.
Yes.
You have an MVP.
Yeah.
It
Yes.
almost
Yeah.
made it. It created some value. It created a
It's
fun
definitely
explosion.
a POC. Yes, it's definitely a POC.
No, but I think why people are afraid of that negative future is because people are afraid of their jobs.
Yeah.
What happened with me when all these AI is coming and will take my jobs.
Yeah.
So
Are you afraid about that?
no,
or?
I will be dead by then.
No, but isn't it also about change hurts? And,
Of course it does.
And are we really, as human, as a species, are we good at change? In one way, you could argue yes, over evolution of millions of years, we have adopted. But if you look at the one single individual, we are not so good at change, right? Are we?
I can give you another T-shirt. My motto in life is change before you have to.
Change before you have to.
I didn't say it myself. I remember the name of the person now, but for me, I love change. So change before you
It's
have
like
to.
the only thing constant in life is change.
Yeah.
Right? It's good.
So if you take that to heart, then, well, not getting a job means, of course you can get a job, but you need to change before you have to in order to work in the context with the AI.
Question to the three of you now you have here. Which profession will be the one forced to disappear when generative AI is fully, when we have that general AI? What do you think?
Which will disappear?
Yeah, which profession we will not have? The first one in because I have my own idea. So which one you think will be
that's a
gone
good question.
first?
It's not the one that I think people think about. If you think blue collar or white collar jobs, it turns out to be more creative jobs that are being at least augmented.
I think we talked about this a little bit with Christopher Ågren. If I extrapolate on that, where the explosion in efficiency will happen the fastest will be in coding. So I would
but not fast as
I would not say the profession of coding will disappear. That's not so. As a whole profession, not. But I think it will be heavily impacted in terms of what are coders doing and what type of coders do we really need.
And we've spoken about automated driving, and then we have automated coding, and the transport sector usually is the
one that highlights it.
Yeah, everyone is saying
what do you
that,
think?
but
So let me prepare for this.
I can tell you mine if you want to. think about it.
No. I'm pretty certain about this. So basically, if you look at it, so Anders spoke about generative AI and how you told about you're saying that the old traditional no. So basically, I spoke with ChatGPT about this. Actually, aka Tom Riddler. And it's basically, and it's really nice because you have now two areas of AI that organizations and people should look like. One is applied AI, which actually utilizes most of the stuff that we have been discussing until now. And we have always been addressing that as a applied AI that you can utilize in organization to automate processes and to innovate and to, and etc. And then you have generative AI, which can help you actually to generate ideas and to make different stuff. So basically, the prototyping and ideation is what generative AI is bringing on the table. So when we are talking about which jobs are the most, let's say, in
big shit.
I would not say in big shit, but it's going to change. It's the ones that are actually working exactly with that ideation and prototyping. So for example, creative. Yes, creative. So for example, let's say that you are a creative artist that you need to create a character for a game. Right? It takes you maybe it's going to take you a day, maybe a week to create, a warrior with an axe, and then you can generate that in 30 seconds. Right? So then it comes the second step that basically you need to take that and now you need to redraw it in the tools that you have, but we will come there very quickly. So all the jobs that are right now just basically in that area, creative ideation, prototyping. I mean, look at it, data innovation this year, I'm disclosing quite a lot, but we will start, the stage is built by Midjourney. I prompted the stage.
You did it as an experiment.
Yes.
The full-on stage that we have invested millions in to build.
Yes.
The design of that is done by Midjourney.
It does by Midjourney, okay? And I will, cool. when we start, I'm going to present this. We will have at least 3 expo areas built or prototyped by Midjourney. So you just put like an open space, technology, white, blue, black, place for, computers and things like that. And then you do variation and you do it. And why should I pay an agency to do that for, 100,000 crowns where I can do it basically in 5 minutes? And I can choose whichever I want to. When I was doing a t-shirts for AIAW Podcast, I went to Fiverr. And the guy, basically, I paid $39 or etc., right? And he sent me some ideas. They were completely crap. So I sent it back. And then he did another one. And after 12 times, I think that he managed to do something, right? And if I put that in Midjourney, I would probably get that very quick and in much, much, much better quality. Now, the second part, so that is the ideation part. Now, you take that picture. Now, in order for you to print it, you need to make it printable. So now you need the technician who is actually can take that, what you have prompted, and then put it into a vector so you can actually print it. So those jobs will not disappear. So we will utilize generative AI within more and more within our ideation. We use it in a marketing, for example, like, hey, I don't like how my text looks like. Can you make it a little bit more call to action driven? It's amazing. right?
I
So
mean,
that part
it is the opposite what you thought about like 10 years ago, what AI would first take over. You thought, that humans will always be the creative one, but it turned out to be the exact
That's
opposite.
correct.
Yes.
Right?
Because if you look at it,
That's totally correct.
how you create is actually hallucinating, right? So it's not a good word. There is a lot of discussion on LinkedIn about that AI is hallucinating, and I don't think also that is the right word. But
But humans do that as well.
but in
It's always
general-
wrong to give anthropomorphic characteristics to an AI. So
Yes,
hallucinations
exactly. So-
is not the right word.
let's say the imagination that it produces, I think that is very similar to what we do, because it's creating image just from some kind of ideas. Like I want a butterfly that is looking. I mean, Emma, who is my youngest daughter, she's 8, so now I introduce her to Midjourney. She's utilizing every day because she can live up her dreams. Daddy, I had like idea about what I want to prompt today, and she's just basically playing around with it until she gets it, right? It's utilizing your imagination in creating something. It's just a brush. It's a beautiful thing. So I don't think it's like negative or it's, but it's very similar to how we create. It's another brush.
Yeah. And actually that makes super sense because they open the door for people that have that kind of creativity, but
Exactly.
have limitations. Remember we discussed about it will open the door for new.
People that never were able to write properly.
Exactly.
People that never were able to draw properly.
But they
people
have that
never
that
were able
idea
to
that
sing
imagine
karaoke
it.
properly. will
That's me.
potentially-
You think an AI will transform my voice and make it sounds better? Because I think it sounds really good. When I sing, I'm like, ooh, it sounds really good, but I
I
don't.
thought so as well, but then I heard, over the years, I sing horribly.
Yeah, me
apparently.
too. But I think I'm more like, okay. But anyway, no, but
What do you
that's
think, by the way?
actually
What's your hypothesis on
my.
jobs?
But it was lawyers
Ah,
because they're paid to write a lot of bullshit, a lot of text that doesn't make sense.
hallucination. Perfect. Yes.
Yeah, but I don't think that is going to be because
How much money you pay a lawyer to just write and
for contract writing maybe, but you already have apps for that already, so you that is
no,
fine.
but argumentative.
Yeah, but lawyer needs to defend you in the law, in a court, right?
Yeah, but it's not often you go to courts. That's not happening in Sweden. Normally,
Yeah.
everything is in paper. You write like a thick thing.
Yeah,
and then,
but you know how many people write like a bullshit contracts and they get sued for it because they miss one word in it?
yeah, but that's what generative AI will help you
Yeah,
to
I
do
don't
it.
think so.
I
It
think you're
will.
onto something. Remember Evelina, she's into this kind of field.
Evelina needs to come back and say, have you started with generative AI now in your
But they had a startup which was basically generating, but it was before this.
But of course, one of the challenges with law is, of course, that you cannot hallucinate, that you need to be able to reflect on the truth in terms of what are the cases. And
Yeah, but all the
what is
cases are documented. So in generative AI, I can read all the cases that have been published
so
and
in
create.
theory, you could. No one can scan all different cases, but,
No, but when
AI
it-
can.
I have another one because
what
I
I'm
was
saying.
reading a very good article today about quants.
And my best friend is a lawyer, so she will kill me when I say
No,
this.
but I hope you're right, though, by the way, because I think we have too many lawyers in this world. So I think if we can reduce that need, it would actually be a good thing for everyone. So I hope you're right.
I hope it too.
Yeah, it was a very great article today when they were testing actually AI versus a quant in trading. And basically, the algorithm it was based on GPT-4. It was looking at the latest news and just giving scores. Basically, if the stock will go up or down, and it beat all the quants.
Really?
Yes, because it's just. Yeah, I think that will be over. So there will be quite a lot of, but it's very negative for us to say that basically these jobs will go, because I still believe it's a brush. That means that the quant now can utilize the AI to back his theories, or maybe he will be able to fine-tune it in a better way. So we will need to learn to work with these tools a little bit better. People are afraid of this technology because they are afraid that they will need to repurpose themselves to the next thing, which they have done it for years. You mentioned like, change is painful. We have been changing for millions of years. So I don't understand why people are making so big of.
I agree 100% with
We have a
Goran
short
here.
memory.
But
Yeah.
can I test something with you? Because I try to formulate exactly this. You know how we said about we shouldn't use the word artificial intelligence. We should use the word augmented intelligence. And we've been exploring the intersect now, how we get use out of AI. And then we realize at some point in time, the AI meets a person, and it's the usefulness, how we make this person more efficient. So on a macro scale, there is no artificial intelligence. It's only augmented intelligence, because on a macro scale, even if we take away full-on jobs or functions, whatever functions are left needs to now interact with the AI. So ultimately, if depending on which level of granularity you look at some point it's always augmented intelligence. Even if you took away a job, so this one was replaced by the AI. This function was replaced by the AI, but now this function in the company or in society is functioning with humans in some ways.
Yeah,
so all of a sudden, augmented intelligence is even a more powerful statement than I first thought.
It is very useful, but there will still be a point and a time when it's not augmenting anymore and potentially singularity have happened.
I hope so.
Yes, well said.
I hope
so. I hope we make it until that time, because I will feel safer when we reach that time, because I'm more afraid
Of human beings.
No, but on the time before that, because people can abuse stupid AI before that happens. But it's been 3 fucking hours now.
Oh, sorry.
I think we should potentially start to wrap up, right?
Yeah, you're right. But actually, just wrap up.
Oh shit.
Dacil?
I will come back another day to discuss everything. But next time, give me a list of things I should not mention.
No, you're not to mention anything. It's just with all the things we're supposed to talk about.
No Elon Musk, no SpaceX, no rabbit holes,
blockchain.
No blockchain.
We speak about blockchain after. It's fine. Dacil, what's happening next in your life? Professionally, privately, coming months?
Professional? I hope not too much, because I started Nagarro in May. It hasn't been a year, so I hope I can continue what I'm doing, and I think what I hope that I can help a lot of companies to be innovative and be there and get rid of all the noise and make sense of what we. If you have that money, I will help you to invest it in the right place. So I hope that I can help a lot of companies.
And you will come to Data Innovation Summit, perhaps?
Of course, I'm the moderator in stage, the best stage in the whole
world.
The Data Innovation Summit's M5.
So which stage are you moderating? M5, which is
data analytics, business and data analytics.
Nice.
And the best people are there. My stage is always full. I'm telling you. I don't want to. So, and I always dress matching Goran. So this is like, I need to synchronize.
Yes. So we go red.
So I will of course be in the Data Innovation Summit. I've been moderating for Hyperwrite for many years, and I love it. It's amazing people. It's super fun. So that will be there.
You need to do an event in Spain. It will be nice.
I'm going to speak in a Spanish event, and I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to talk
Spanish.
data in Spanish.
Yeah.
I'm so freaking out. Like, oh my God, I need to learn a lot of terms.
Not in English. You mean in Spanish?
Spanish. Because in Spain you don't say data warehouse. It's called.
What do you say? How do you say data in Spanish?
Oh my
data.
God.
Data.
What is data warehouse and data mesh in Spanish?
Data mesh doesn't exist. I need to Google it. Data warehouse is called almacén de datos. Almacén de datos.
Almacén de datos.
That's data
That's
warehouse.
the data warehouse. Ooh.
Anyway,
So what is the translation of that?
dato.
No, but dato is fine. But the first one. before
Almacén
that.
is that the house of data.
I cannot speak anymore. Almacén is warehouse.
Oh, it's
so
warehouse.
almacén de datos.
All right. Okay. Cool.
So it will be fun. So that's my and private. I hope. I'm actually turning 50 soon.
Oh, really?
Yes, I am. So I'm so happy, and I will tell you that is the best age for a woman. Is my age. We have passed everything, so we're like I think we were the 50s, the new 30s, or what was it?
Yeah.
So no, I'm actually really happy. I'm actually happy. I love my job. I love people that I know, and I work with amazing companies and colleagues. So I'm happy.
Awesome.
Sorry for everybody that's not unhappy.
That's it. Anyone that you would recommend to come on this podcast? Someone that you would like us to...
Yeah, I mentioned Green AI, Jacob. Sorry, Jacob, I remember your surname. I'm so bad with the... But I will hope that he comes to talk about Green AI and the amazing things he did. So I hope he comes. And I should have remembered your name, surname, but after 2 glasses of cava, it's like...
We will find him, no worries. Dacil, it's been a true pleasure. And
That was 3. Come on.
Who's got
I thought we talked about this before.
I think it's one of the longest podcasts we've had. I'm not sure.
No, this definitely is the longest podcast that we have ever done. This is 3 hours and 10 minutes. Yeah.
Anyway, it's been a true pleasure, and I hope you can stay for a little while longer, and we'll speak about blockchain and whatnot going forward. Thank you very much.
So much.
Bye-bye. Thank you.